Hello and welcome to another weekly episode of the Beer Fridge Podcast. On this week's episode, we go to beer school.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes, hello and welcome to another weekly episode of the Beer Fridge Podcast, your home of real beer, real breweries, real opinions. As always, whether you listen to this episode or watch, make sure you subscribe, hit that ding-a-ling-a-ling to be notified of every single episode. You can show your support by giving us a 5-star rating, or you can show your official support and go to patreon.com/Beer Fridge Podcast. My name is Gavin. I've got my usual drinking friends. I've got Scott. And I've got Callum. Good evening, sir. Oh, look at that. That's a fine way to start a podcast.
That is indeed. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. We are... exactly that. This evening, we are going to beer school and we are joined by Chris and Jamie from 3050. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. How we actually synced that, I have no idea. We'll sign in with exactly the same.
Well timed, salute. Excellent.
Yeah, don't pretend you never practiced that before we started.
For 4 hours, mate. It was all that for 4 hours.
Just making sure. And pouring lots of beer as well in preparation, of course. That's the big thing about us all meeting up and discussing.
That is the main thing. I appreciate you guys coming on. We're going to deep dive into the world of beer tasting and more, but we'll start off as we normally do and go around the virtual table and see what we're drinking to kick things off.
Let's go around the table.
Nice one. Right, Cal, you took a swig out your glass first. You are caught, my friend. Go ahead.
I did. And this is going to put me to the test right from the word go, because there's no information that I can find anywhere, no matter how furiously I Google. About what hops are in this
beer on the side of the can, does it? Beer.
Pretty much. So it's quite interesting. It's the beer's called Adventure Is Worthwhile, and it's by Buxton. It's a Kvyat Knipa, 5.5%, and my furious googling combined with the wackaging that's on the can is that this beer was made for International Women's Collaborative Brewing Day. At Buxton Brewery, and the brewer is Sophie, and this is basically a beer to bring beer-loving women and non-binary folk together in solidarity and support. So yeah, and the name of the beer itself is a quote from Amelia Earhart, famous pioneering aviator of the early 20th century. So that's pretty much as I can find out about the beer. It tastes amazing.
It's got a great colour on there, Callum.
Yeah, it's really hazy. It's got a phenomenal body for only 5.5%. I suspect that'll be the yeast that's lending that to it, and probably copious amounts of oats as well. But it's really, it's super citrusy, but it's not sour for that. It's like sweet citrus, like maybe sort of clementines or that kind of vibe that I'm getting. Maybe some peach. So make of that
Stone
what you
fruits.
will. I'm not enough. I don't really want to say stone fruits because that's just a bit wanky. So
Like, what are stone fruit?
Cop-out.
yeah. So
Cop-out stone fruit.
that's the vibe. The vibe that I'm getting, it's really fruity, it's really citrusy, it's really soft, just what you would expect from a New England IPA, and it's extremely, extremely drinkable, delicious. Next.
Any grapefruit on that at all, Callum?
See, I wouldn't go as far to say it's as bitter as that. I mean, I don't think there's enough bitter citrus there, that kind of pithy flavour that you would get from a grapefruit or even an orange. Like, that's why I went clementine instead of orange, because it's not as bitter as an orange would be for me. It's really sweet.
We tasted a beer recently that actually was supposed to have an OJ characteristic, but it was more like the orange juice had been boiled in a pan and then poured into the beer. It effectively was so damp and just gone and musty. But yeah, I always like to ask about grapefruit because I consider it like the woody citrus fruit. and it can have both that sort of more grandfathery woody type characteristic, but it can be pink grapefruit. It can be that slightly more sort of zesty characteristic, even a pithy grapefruit skin, as you said, that sort of bittering sort of slightly more bitter profile to the finish of the beer. But yeah, it looks delicious. Looks juicy.
It's really nice. It's really nice.
Yeah.
It's relatively fresh as well. It was canned end of February, so it's only been in the can a couple of months, so it's still singing. It's really good.
Good stuff. I will stick on the same brewery train. While you were talking to Mark, who's decided not to turn up because he's moving house, bugger. In the email stream feed was another Buxton beer, the Wyoming Sheep Ranch Double IPA, which I picked up at 8.4%. Again, from Buxton, as mentioned, the wackagen is there's nothing sheepish about the big, bold double IPA, fresh piney with a bitterness that will butt you into the next valley. And in fairness, all those notes that it says, it should be bold, it's meant to be bitter, it's piney. Before I read the label, I did write down what I tasted. And in fairness, I wrote piney, hoppy, bitter. So I will take it. The can is doing exactly what it is. The liquid is doing on the inside. There's a little bit of sweetness, like kind of like a, I don't know, like a caramel almost kind of sweetness in the middle of it. But it is definitely piney. It is definitely bitter enough. And what I actually like is, especially with IPAs nowadays and double IPAs and these beers that are bitter, they'll like to put West Coast on it, they'll like to put Mountain on it, all these gibberish. But at the end of the day, if you just put an IP on it, it's allowed to be bitter, it's allowed to be juicy, it can be either way. But traditional, proper, classic IPAs will be bitter, and this is lovely. It's 8.4%, but I'll tell you what, that is well hidden, very well hidden, and the correct colour that I'd want from.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's really amber.
Yeah, so thoroughly enjoying that, and that's a Tesco number, by the way. So, for people listening to the podcast, and there's a couple of beers we've picked purposely that are readily available from the supermarket. So, if you're listening or you're watching on YouTube, you can join along with the kind of beer tasting 101 experience. So, yeah, we'll definitely get that again. And Buxton, in fairness, supermarket-wise, has usually been a brewery I've stayed away from. I've had two beers maybe over a year ago that I wasn't a massive fan of, which pushed me away from the brewery and the supermarkets. But yeah, I'll 100% pick that up again. In fact, I would love to have that against Sierra Nevada, just to compare the West Coastiness to it. I know it's a double.
The torpedo version or something would be good.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Torpedo would be good.
Torpedo is fantastic. That technology really changed how hops were added. God, that was more than a decade ago. I can't even remember the year it happened. Out of interest, so I've heard you say before you would like beers to just be labeled IPA.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get like New England's or just hazy IPA, that is supposed to suggest that the business is going to be lower. So would you go as far to say just label them as bitter or not bitter IPA?
I think for us, it's more of the point when they start being silly and saying going, "Oh, it's a mountain IPA," or just making up nonsense. Just decide if you want it to be bitter. If it's bitter, just say it's a West Coast. I don't mind beers saying West Coast or New England. That's absolutely fine because these styles exist for a reason and they are widely available for a reason that they're popular. So, it's the more the mountain crap that annoys me, to be honest. Just say if it's bitter, say it's a West Coast. If it's juicy, say it's a New England. Or if you're just in a classic style, just say it's an IPA.
It's too far west for me just to call it IPA, or it's not west enough. So I'll just stick it somewhere in the middle and stick mountain in front of it. And that's what we'll go with, rather than we'll just drop the whole pretense of where's it supposed to be and just let it locate itself based on who likes it. Or it's like, oh, it's too hazy, it's not come out clear enough for us to do that, or it's too sweet on the, but it smacks of, well, Gavin thinks everything's out, it's a conspiracy and it's a mistake, but I've no doubt there's Utah and stuff and Colorado based breweries that can actually say they're mountainous. But there's no many, especially not in the UK.
Yeah.
Speaking about mistakes, have you guys ever tried a beer called Loverbond's Sour Grapes?
No.
No.
Intrigued.
You've never heard of this
Not
one?
yet.
Okay, great.
Tell
So if you do find it, I think Loverbonds have just shut down in the last 2 years, but there was a mistake. They were originally producing their wheat beer, Henley Gold, and it turned incredibly sour, I think, just before packaging. So they ended up just selling it in their tap room, and everyone went, this is insanely delicious. So they repeated it, and the Henley Gold that went off effectively became a new beer called Sour Grapes. So I love it.
Right.
Sometimes it does happen. It produces magic. But yeah, sometimes it's pretty awful.
Yeah.
It can be a run-of-the-mill mistake that kind of goes, we'll just put this out, even if it has got a big savory Marmite aroma to it. Yeah, that's exactly what everybody wants on the back end of their Imperial Stout today. But yeah, whatever.
Mistakes in brew. It was. I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it was Bob Ross, the big Afro painting guy, that said we don't make mistakes. We just have happy accidents, and that's I think that's fine. That's totally fine in brewing. To have happy accidents. If you shoot for a certain style and miss, then fine, but own up to it and just say, look, this is what we were attempting to brew, but this is what we've actually made. We think it tastes okay, so we're selling it anyway. But the worst thing you can do is to call a beer something and then not have that liquid in the can. So if you brew a New England and it doesn't taste like a New England, or if you brew an IPA or even a stout or a porter or a bitter in the UK and it doesn't taste, it doesn't fit the brief, then it's it makes it hard to like it for me.
I remember hearing you guys talk about the pickle beer and how it's got cucumber and dill in it, and it's like, well, if it's going to it's going to have that on the tin, it's going to have to taste like that, and you can't complain that it tastes like that.
100%.
So accept it, and it does have the salty kick. I haven't actually tried it yet, but I learned about it listening to you guys, so I will get it when it next comes out.
It's a
That's
cracking beer.
Barney's brew, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
cracking beer. It's beers like that, and then you'll see a review on Untapped, 1 star. It tastes like cucumber, and you're like, "What the fuck?"
Should we try that together? You and I?
Yeah, I'll try a cucumber beer.
We'll try the pickle beer together.
I'll try it.
Absolutely.
I'll give Ali a shout and
See if you
we
can
get that
source a
sorted.
can.
Yeah,
See if we can
Scott, what
find
you got,
someone.
mate? In fact,
Oh.
it's all sold. Mostly sold out, isn't it? We'll speak to Ali.
It's
Anyway,
going.
sorry.
We'll
We'll
brew
see,
it again.
we'll
We'll
see.
brew it again.
Exactly.
I normally have, and I've not got it this time. I normally have half the stock. The last time they were looking for it. I don't know if it was to do some taste comparisons or to determine something, but they were asking. Ali did come out to a few people and say, "Look, I know you bought a fair chunk. Do you have any left?" And I'd said, "Look, I've definitely got a few cans," but he turned it. He didn't. They found some, as oft happens. It's in breweries, you go about 3 cans or 5 cans or 8 cans back in the brewery fridge and find a few, but he found a few. So, but I was like, I've got maybe 4 or 5 if you want for the original one. And after Callum and I tried it, anyway, very quickly, I've hopefully gone for something a wee bit weird and wonderful. So we've had Brewtown of Beer of the Year fame from our wee awards thing that we did towards the end of last year. And I've had this in the fridge for a wee while, but I've been keeping it for something where, I don't know whenever the mood would take you for one of these, but it's a white chocolate s'mores stout. So it's a white stout. It's 6.4%. It's supposed to give me kind of coffee, kind of white chocolate vibes. It's got coffee from a roastery called Symposium, drizzled over. It's a white stout. It's supposed to offer sweet and indulgent kind of taste, if you like, classic campfire treat. It's supposed to be velvety, perfect for those nights by the fire pit. When the sun, trust me, to pick it when the sun's splitting the trees, but there we go. It's Maris Otter, torrefied wheat, caramel, and amber, Columbus and Magnum in there as well. And it's supposed to, or the adjuncts added are vanilla, cacao nibs, as you can imagine, and coffee, and then a bit of lactose in there. So it looks almost like Gavin's
Christ.
IPA that he tried.
Let's see again.
I remember that beer. It was a cracker.
Oh,
Yes,
That one.
it definitely smells the part. You
I
definitely
always used
get
to
that
try
kind
white
of.
stouts. Sorry.
On you go.
I was going to say, I always used to try white stouts with a blindfold on as part of the fun, because it'd be like, let's just see how much this actually confuses the senses. Like we way back when Brewdog first started, we actually did a white stout tasting with James in the pub called the White Horse in Parsons Green, which is a beer pub basically in Fulham that I was in for 16 years. And we did the blindfold trick for 55 people. It was so fun because literally 7 people understood what it was. Everyone else is like, this is going to be a dark stout, about 9%. It's going to be... What is this? Why is this white? Oh, my God. So confusing, but fun. So confusing, but fun.
Thing is,
How's it tasting?
I've had one instance where I picked up a can and I only read, I don't know, the can was white, so I just assumed it was like an IPA.
Yeah.
Got it back home, discovered it was a white stout. And I was like, bugger. I was like, oh no. But sorry, Scott. How's it?
It's
how's
lovely.
It
I'll not spend. I'm never sure with my palate and my taste buds at all. It's got that kind of. It's got a stouty character to it with the coffee and stuff that's added. So it's definitely got that in spades. And it's got but it's a lot of sweetness, bags of sweetness in there. It's roasty, but I don't know if it would be roasty enough to trick me.
Right.
But I can see it. I've obviously ruined the control there. But I don't know if it probably looking at it is is biasing me slightly towards saying it's not roasty enough. It definitely packs a good punch for the coffee. It's definitely got that. You can smell white chocolate if you like from it. It's got that on the nose. And yeah, as it's warmed up in the glass, it's really, really drinkable. 6.4% is amped up a wee bit, but obviously it's not too heavy. It's not imperial or anything like that. And it's perfectly pleasant. It's a real kind of sweetie, if you like. And yeah, excellent beer. I don't know if it would trick me, but it was good to try something a bit off the wall. White stout. Go and look for something weird and wonderful.
So we haven't been properly introduced, but Jamie's a beer expert. I'm a beer drinker, but I know more about wine. But I'm just curious because you said that it had cacao in it, and normally, and you're talking about the chocolate and coffee flavors, and normally I expect them from the roasted malt. And is it the cacao that's giving those flavors so that you think it's like a stout with the darker roasted flavors, and then it's tricking you because it's sneaking them in through the cacao and different things like that? Yeah, okay. No, that's a dirty beer.
It's definitely those adjuncts. It happens all too often where you add in adjuncts to something and you think, why bother? You can build that flavor elsewhere, but it's lending a hand.
It just changes the style, but with the same profile, So that's. I mean, I'm pleased that you could taste it blind.
That was fun.
That must be a nightmare to taste blind, though.
It's definitely confusing, but there are little giveaways.
Yeah.
Carbonation can be a giveaway sometimes, and the body is actually quite confusing because it's very hard to replace the body of a natural stout, which is why typically a white stout will be a higher ABV to try and sort of develop a bigger mouthfeel. Plus the warming sensation come through actually makes you think it's a higher ABV, stronger beer. Oh, that must be an imperial stout, that kind of stuff. But overall, like, it's just a fun beer to make, but it has to be flavored very carefully. I think the sweetness, is that like the s'more coming through quite a bit? Are you getting like a clear s'more characteristic, or is it sort of just fumbled in with everything else a bit?
No, it's got a kind of, there's a distinctive layer, if you like, of sweetness from it, which is quite good because you're almost kind of, your top is your kind of white chocolate because you're getting that on your nose, and then you've got the kind of, I suppose, like a marshmallowy kind of layer in the middle, and then towards the back
looking
end,
for that sort of caramel type vibe with it, like with the toasted marshmallow as opposed to just pure sweetness.
Yeah, and it does go the roastiness appears at the end almost like that's to remind you the style and add that kind of bitter finish that then has you gone back and having even more. So,
did it say it had any marshmallow fluff in the ingredients on there? Because I've seen that in some beers recently.
It's got lactose.
It doesn't say it doesn't give fluff. It's there's vanilla in there, which I suppose vanilla plus lactose.
It doesn't say fluff.
But well-known Bruton are the kind of like they're the kind of guys that would say if it had fluff in it, they would tell you it had fluff.
Definitely would. They 100% would tell you.
They
Chris,
would probably change the spelling. But
well, that's right. They would
just to get run the cease and desist. They would call it floof or something like that.
That's very, very true. Very true. Chris, yourself, what are you drinking?
So I've got an hazy IPA from Opal, from Farmyard. The beer's called Opal. It's a 5.2% hazy IPA, and normally it's got this weird profile. I looked at the side of the hops, and I know some hops. I don't know many hops. I'm not as hardcore beer expert as you guys, but I don't recognize any of the hops at all. So I'll tell you what they are, and you can go, "Oh, you're an idiot," because they're really common. Yakima Chief, Hyper Boost, Crush Oil, or is it Crush Oil Extract? I don't know what that is. That a hop?
Yep.
Balanced with Cashmere and Eldorado for heavy tropical notes and citrus stone fruit. And when you smell it, I mean, how weird are those hops? Are they like absolutely? Because they're not a Fuggles. I know that.
No, it's not Fuggles. It's some of the latest technology and stuff. It's innovative hop technology that's coming into the market. A lot of cryo. I think you said cryo hops in there.
Yeah.
And there's even what's the thing? Your friends from Stewart's Brewery, they're experimenting with the hop from Yakima.
And the kind of hop oil stuff.
Super concentrated hop oil.
Hop oil.
Yeah, that's what it's in.
What I've found with those, the kind of hop oil things, is it really kind of makes the aroma jump out the can as soon as you pop the can open and you're pouring it. Like you'll get that punch in the face of whatever. 9 times out of 10, it's that kind of tropical notes that punch in the face with these kind of hop oils, and I find that accentuates that like a lot instead of like your normal kind of citrus and stuff.
So what are you getting?
I'm getting mango, of all things. I don't normally expect mango. There's orange, mango, a bit of passion fruit, and maybe some other citrusy stuff in there. But mango's like the most dominant thing, and I don't really get mango and beers before, except for once. I had a mate in Qatar, and he was brewing his own, but he was adding mangoes to the beer because it was so disgusting. I mean, it's illegal to buy alcohol over there.
Mistakes in brewing. Yeah. I'll cover this up for some.
No, you actually literally had half mango, half beer, and that was the only way you could drink it.
Don't filter it. Let the can explode in someone's kitchen. That's
But I think that's the only time I've ever had mango beers. For you guys, because I don't normally come across mango and beers. Is it common or?
Yeah, I mean,
it's a really hard flavour to get, isn't it? It's really, I find it really difficult. Well, I was going to say that was a bit I was going to chime in with was Bruton have tried it and failed in the past, and we've been slagged. We were nearly mortal enemies as a result because we had said their Mango Unchained a few iterations ago was like a bit like the Mango Robinsons, but not quite. It was somebody's added about 3 quarts more water than they should have done. But that was way back then, and they've since improved it massively. So feedback works, right?
But those kind of mango passion fruit flavors are fairly typical of a good example in New England. That
touted.
What it's one of those flavors that they say, the buzzwords I spoke about not wanting to refer to stone fruits, because those are the kind of buzzwords that get bandied around and almost generic terms. So this beer is tropical. It's stone fruits. It's like description without a description, if you like.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can dial it into mango and passion fruit, it's pretty impressive. So yeah.
I think one of the things to definitely consider when you're talking about mango as well, just coming from the hops, is that there's 3 stages to adding hops. You've got early boil, late boil, which is bitterness and then aroma, and then you've got dry hopping, which is during or after fermentation. And the thing with dry hopping, of course, is the stability of those hops is much lower than the previous 2.
Yep.
So you can have this amazing mango profile or apricot profile or peach profile, something along those lines. But if the can is A, exposed to too much oxygen, or B, left to go warm for too long and left just for too much time, not only will the hop profile stale a lot quicker, especially those dry hopped characteristics, but they could also get oxidized, which could eventually, in the worst case scenario, start to produce that wet paper cardboard characteristic you can get in it. We did have a double IPA recently that had staled really badly and oxidized. Both Chris and I, we were both like, from the brand we were like very, very surprised. Yeah. But when you can get that fresh mango when the dry hopping has actually allowed that profile to come out, and it has been kept cold, and it is still fresh enough. I mean, that is 2 to 3 months in the can.
April it's bottled.
Yeah, it's
great.
very, very fresh.
Yeah,
so I mean,
it's quite fresh.
you can get it, but
you
it
buy it
fades
from?
really quickly. Sorry,
Where was it bought from? Was it a bottle shop or was it?
I bought it direct from the brewery.
Well, there you go. So it'll have been stored correct, because Farmyard are an awesome brewery, and and they make phenomenal beers, and if they'll store their stuff correctly. But that's the lottery that you take. We're not always. I mean, we're not always in a position to go to a bottle shop or to go direct to the brewery. So it's we have to go to a supermarket or whatever, and that's the gamble that you take if you buy these styles from a supermarket, because it's not cold stored. It's it's going out onto the shelf, and it can be there for weeks or months at room temperature, and it's a real lottery about what you're going to taste when you open the can. So
I'd love to add with Farmyard, by the way, Danny and his crew. They, I think, should be added alongside Evan at the Colonel for doing small beers, table beers, micro IPAs. Every single low ABV beer I've tasted from them has been incredibly good. It just isn't pithy. They actually get the profile of the beer absolutely spot on. It's in balance the whole way through. Makes it really enjoyable. And I think it was called Wee Chef, a micro IPA that I had from them about 4 months ago. Absolutely sensational. But yeah, Farmyard Brew is one of my favorites, and they can actually produce anything. Did you guys try their Stay Crumble, the apricot something sour crumble?
We might have done, but I want to say no.
that, but I can't remember.
We had them in the podcast. It would be 2 years ago now, easily. And then they're always a stalwart, because whether I'm going north or the guys are coming south, through the motorway and TB services, and there's always Farmyard stuff on the shelf, and it is an automatic selection. You just stop at TB services and you just get 5 or 6 Farmyard beers. And I can't say honestly that I've had that one, in fairness.
I gave it to my wife and she was like, is that seriously, have they put crumble in this beer? I'm like, it's very, very cleverly done. It really, really did actually come off as an apricot and rhubarb crumble, I think it was. It was pretty cool. You don't get it very often where someone completely nails that in terms of how the profile should be, the correct level of sourness as well. Yeah. So it was really refreshing whilst having all the aroma and characteristics that you would expect from it. So yeah, that's a good beer though. Very nice.
Yeah, it's nice.
Good brewery as well. Excellent selection there. Jimmy, yourself, what you got? What you drinking?
What have I got? So I have.
I feel like there's something special coming here.
No, it's not particular. I wouldn't say it's like a big bold beer, but I've got the Anspach and Hop Day Celebration Porter at 4.5%. And these guys, based in London, originally started creating porters, and they've returned to the more traditional recipe for this particular incarnation. And what I love about it is that a lot of porters that I find today in the market are actually too similar to stouts, whereas this really dials back into where the porters were of enjoying those slightly more chocolate-led aromas instead of leaning into a more toasted, charred coffee profile. And quite literally, when you smell it, it's like you've picked up some dark chocolate and started grating it as well. It's absolutely sensational. But I mean, just from the appearance, I'll hold it up in a second. You can see it's got this nice dark ruby red color to it, which immediately tells us, the dark roasted malts have been used, probably some caramel malts as well.
Oh, you can see it as a light.
So you can potentially get caramel, dried fruits. You probably won't get candy floss in this, but you are going to get a little bit of coffee. So there's a bit of a fresh coffee bean, like walking into a coffee house.
There's a lot of coffee in there for me.
You get a lot of coffee in there. I get a lot of coffee. But I definitely pick up that dark chocolate like it's just been grated in, and it definitely has the sweetness from the caramel on the palate.
I love the dark fruit side of things, but when you drink a good porter and you get that kind of plum raisin type dried fruit vibe, I just love that aspect of the beer.
Absolutely, and definitely, as you were saying it, I was like, he's completely right. He's got the plum, and there's also raisins in there, like really, really ripe raisins that actually have got that really juicy fruit actually added to it. The thing is, like, you can get some porters that have a bit more of a black currant coming from a hop profile. You can get some more pom fruit potentially coming from the yeast, perhaps. But this one is just completely clean, really, really focused on the malts-driven profiles that are supposed to come out from it. It's just a great tasting beer. And my friend Steve Gray, that I used to work in the White Horse years ago, he actually brews and works there now. So big shout out to Steve. Still love you, man. Craziest Welshman I've ever known in my life. But yeah.
From a country of crazy people.
Well, I think the beer really, does definitely bring it in, doesn't it? Yeah, lots of crazy people.
Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. I think this is a prime opportunity to let you guys introduce yourself properly and what you guys are about at 3050, and let our listeners
as well.
I'll go first. Yeah. So my name's Chris Scott. I'm actually not a beer guy. I'm a wine guy, although I probably drink more beer than wine, but I taste a heck of a lot more wine. And some of the beers I'm not allowed to mention because I'm a man who drinks simple lagers, a lot of simple lager.
Nothing wrong with that.
I mean, at the moment, I'm digging a trench to put a new water main into my house. And you know what? You do a couple of hours of digging in the sun. I do not want a bloody porter. I want a simple lager.
There's nothing. There's no better liquid to drink righteously.
Yes, after a bit of hard work. I know. You feel good, don't you?
Yeah.
So, I've run a APP, or Approved Program Provider, for WCT, which is wine school, spirits and beer. They educate people on product. It's mainly about product. So how to taste beer or spirits or whatever. You need to know, as Jamie was saying occasionally, that you need to understand how the product's made, and the tasting, which Jamie will get into later on, is very much about understanding how the beer was made and therefore what to expect, and then to be able to put into structure. So, and it's all about understanding beers and wines mainly. And then about a year ago, I hooked up with Jamie, and because WC had moved into the beer market, they'd replaced, who was it?
The Institute Brewing Institute.
Yeah, they'd been running the courses up till recently, and then they pulled out because they were moving in a slightly different direction. And WC said, look, we will run the product courses, if you like, for people in the trade and also enthusiastic amateurs. So we hooked up with Jamie, and we got Jamie through because he came with masses of beer knowledge. I came with a good understanding of lager, and we started getting Jamie trained up for the courses, and we launched the courses earlier this year. Level 1 and level 2 courses in beer, and I was the first punter through on the level 1, and me and my wife did the level 2 together as well. And I tell you one thing about beer education is, my wife now has become a beer drinker. She never was a beer drinker before. She would never go to a pub, go to a pub and would have a beer. She'd go, no, I'll have a glass of wine, please. Or I'll have a rum and Coke if she was feeling really adventurous. And the last couple of times she's off getting wheat beers and fruit beers, all sorts of crazy things that she would never do. And she'd go, no, I feel like a hazy IPA, or, she's got the vocab now to know what she likes. And I think that's one of probably the best things is actually now that when we go out, she knows what she wants, or she knows if there's something a little bit unusual, at least she's got a understanding of where it might fit in the spectrum and why she might like it or not like it, or how she feels about it. So so we've been doing the courses now since about January.
6 months,
and they're going quite well, but they're very much, the WST is very much about product led. It's about understanding what you're tasting and understanding how it's made and the context that it sits within in terms of the structure, because you guys know lots about beer, but you may not have actually tried to put it into a coherent structure, perhaps. And even if you have, a lot of drinkers don't. I certainly don't. And I used to drink lots of beer. But by having it in a structure, it means that you can understand things. And instead of having to learn lots about a single beer, you learn about the structure, and then you just learn why this beer is different. So for me, when we were talking about that beer earlier, I've had reasonable amount of hazy IPA, but I'm expecting more, Jamie was saying, grapefruits, passion fruits, that type of flavors. So for me, mango was a little bit of an unusual one, which is why I sort of called it out, because that's the odd thing in this beer that was unusual to me. It tasted what I would expect for a hazy IPA, but that was the odd thing. So once I got some more knowledge, things made a lot more sense to me anyway. But I'm definitely, just so you know, a wine geek. I know lots about wine, and I drink a fair bit of wine, but more beer probably than wine.
Also, what you need to do is shout out your wine podcast as well.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So I do a wine podcast called the UK Wine Show. We've started in 2006. So next year is our 20th year of podcasting.
Wow.
When we started out, there was like maybe 100 podcasts in the world. And I like technology as well. So we got in there and we worked out how to create one, and we were just into it and loved it. And we've been going now for almost 20 years. And it's great. I mean, it's just good. It's opened so many doors, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
I can go up to anybody in the wine trade and go, I want to spend half an hour picking your brain. And I can. And they'll go, yes, please. Great. Thanks very much. And you just spend an hour, half an hour, whatever, just going through and learning lots of stuff. And that's just the best thing, isn't it? So,
Well, I'll
Can I
tell
ask you a
that makes-
professional? Sorry.
oh, UK
no,
Wine Show,
carry on.
just for your beer crossovers. If you're wine curious.
You're wine curious.
On the spot, Chris. On the spot. The whole world's listening. Which country produces the best wine?
Oh,
Oh, okay.
I thought you were going to lean in on your own country for a minute.
No, I probably will. I just want to give it a. I want
gotta
to give
think
it
about
a.
it.
I want to make
Yeah,
it.
process.
I want to make it look like I've thought about it. Of course, New Zealand. I'm a Kiwi. And you guys are all Scottish, right? So I'm from Dunedin, down the bottom end of New Zealand, where in the centre of Dunedin we have a statue of Robbie Burns. Right in the middle of town. The Queen Victoria, she's way out in the outskirts of town, but right in the middle is Robbie Burns sitting on the bottom of Stewart Street. So
I'm very proud of it. Actually,
Amazing.
the first time I met Chris, he was very, very proud of his heritage and where he came from, and his knowledge of wine was insane. So I was sitting there absorbing that while he was trying to listen to me absorbing about beer. It was a great chat, actually.
yeah.
Who finishes that conversation? I still have no idea. But yeah.
I would have had the last word.
Yeah.
It's an endless conversation.
love it. Amazing stuff. But yes, wine crossover people listen to the podcast, go over. But granted, did your 20 years make our 7 look so minor? But yes, Jamie, yourself,
7 years
what
is
you
very
got?
good, though.
Wow,
7
well,
years is
yeah.
good distance.
We're trying.
Yeah.
I'll practice it.
We'll
We'll finish
catch
our
up at-
apprenticeship eventually.
Well, it's kind of like what I said to you guys earlier when we were building up to this. I look at this podcast, and the thing I love the most is it reminds us as friends to get together and chat about things that
Yeah.
we're passionate about, that we love. And when I listen to you guys, it is especially like in the last. I have to travel a lot for part of what I do, which I'll say in a sec. But it's like a therapy session because you're really listening to people discuss things that you do care about, hearing about new things that are happening in the industry, and hearing conversations that you would like to be having yourself. So it encourages you to go out and actually get involved with your friends and actually see them face to face, or even over a good video link. I mean, it's easy to do, isn't it? We had to do it 4 or 5 years ago. So it's an easy enough thing to do if you get a quick 30 seconds. I actually chat to my mate who moved to Sweden a lot. We call it the pub night, and he always brings a couple of beers. He lives opposite Omnipolo. I hate him.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
God.
yeah.
I'll just nip to the fridge. Which
Yeah,
means
exactly.
across the road.
Just unbelievable. And he's like, why are they serving it like an ice cream? Oh my God, James,
It
seriously.
brings
please.
the I'm just popping to the church is just I mean
Yeah.
has a different meaning when you are across from Omnipolio. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Well jealous of that.
Never out of church. Has he found God? Yes. Yes.
Very, very the closest thing to it in beer
Yes.
terms or
Uh-huh.
whatever.
He's definitely over there having a religious experience. Whatever.
Tell me about it. If he brings a different beer onto the screen, I get pretty disappointed, I have to say.
Yeah. It's definitely spiritual, if nothing else.
Indeed, that certainly is. Jamie, yourself, introduction for yourself as well. Like I said, like you got a little bit of an introduction there, but yes, let's get a full
sure.
profile.
Good Lord, we have enough time. So I'll give you the profiles. Back in 2003, I was a young guy with long blonde hair, wanted a job to basically earn some money to go traveling. I ended up working in a pub called the White Horse on Parsons Green in London, which was basically a full-on beer pub. 21 cask ale lines, 82 keg lines, over 200 bottled beers and cans. So I was like, okay, guess Foster's isn't my favorite beer anymore. So I started basically working in the cellar, which was a lot of manual labor. Never forget the day when they told me to go and clean the casks which there were 55 casks to clean that day. What they didn't tell me is you're just supposed to clean the shive and the keystone, which I got the wrong way around, shive and keystone. So I was there polishing these casks with a scrubber to basically make them have a metal shine. Biggest waste of 2 hours. But anyway, good mentality apparently for wanting to do good hygiene. And I started becoming what you would call just the beer geek, the beer expert, the beer enthusiast, whatever my team called me. If a person had a question about a beer from the bar, they would always go, oh, you want to speak to Jamie? And I'd go and sit down with them, discuss the lineup, the range, what are you looking for? And off we go. Now, I got to the point where I got challenged to basically say, look, you're clearly a beer sommelier, so go and do the accreditation and the courses, which I did over 2 years. In 2014, I went and did the exam. Very confident young man, I'm going to do this. And I failed it. I failed it bad. I really did not know enough about beer, and it was quite embarrassing for me to go back, and I hated it. And I remember going back and thinking, okay, I need to put that to one side, concentrate on my career, working in assistant manager, deputy manager, cellar manager. But I ended up moving to work for sales in breweries 2 years later, where I started working for a guy called Duncan Sandbrook from Sandbrook's Brewery based in Wandsworth now. And he was one of the best mentors I've ever had. And he sort of guided me back into the beer frame of thinking and the love for it. I was still a hobbyist drinker, sometimes home brewer, but to get back into the brain to want to become a sommelier, he really sort of said, you have got it, but you need to rethink how you're going to do it. So what I've sort of said before publicly to friends in the industry and around is that I found the framework for learning about beer too scattered. Oh, let's talk about Sabro. And that hop produces X aroma. Let's talk about Simcoe. Let's talk about Citra. So you get given a list of aroma profiles, and then you're expected to immediately get those in the beer, but not everybody does. So I went back and I said, okay, how does this system work? So the olfactory system, which processes aroma through the nose, which is orthonasal, and through the mouth, which is retronasal. Okay, then let's look at the ingredients. So let's have a better understanding about the 4 ingredients of beer. So I read Pete Bound's Miracle Brew. Great book if no one's ever read it. And then I thought, okay, now I've got to learn about beer and food pairing. So I got Beer Pairing by Julia Hertz and Gwen Conley. And all of this stuff put together, I went in and did the exam in 2017, passed with flying colours, became a beer sommelier, and went, what in the world am I going to do with this now? You've got this accreditation, but nobody does anything with it. What are you going to do? And so I continued working for Sandbrooks, went to Siren for 10 months, which was great fun. Big shout out to my friend Sean Knight. You should put him on the podcast. Amazing brewer at Siren Craft Brew. And, sorry?
We're in talks. We're back and forth with Siren a couple of times. The dates haven't quite worked out yet. So yeah, we're in negotiations, if you like. So
his beard will not fit on the screen. It's enormous. And yeah, so come 2019, I got offered this random gig to go and do some beer and food pairing for a night. And I turned up. I did it in a pub in Chelsea. It was quite smart. I understood what the beers were, but I didn't know who the client was. And they asked for a second one the week later, so I did that. And anyway, it turned out that the people that had hired me was a big macro producer, and they wanted to do more work with me. So that encouraged me to take the leap to become a consultant, a drinks consultant specializing in beer. And so what I do now, fast forward to today, is I've joined to become an educator with Chris because there are 2 things in there, which I will go into detail more, but basically I really wanted to become an educator because of the education I received. And then I also became things such as an assessor, working in procurement and also working in marketing. And so for the assessment work, for example, what I've been doing today is going all around the southeast of England, assessing cask beer for a company called Caskmark.
Right.
So I've done something near to about 8 to 10 venues, and I have to go in unannounced and actually ask for samples, test the beer quality, give them a score rating, and then continue on. So that's independent assessment work that you go out and do. But the education piece, if I can come back to that, firstly, the education that I received, I wanted to give back to people because if you've learned a skill and you can pass it back to others, it's actually very invaluable to keep sharing that knowledge, whether it be through podcasts and broadcasts or whether it be more in a classroom environment, which is what we obviously specialize in. And secondly, I struggled so much at school to learn. I could not sit there, read and write and learn. It just didn't work for me.
Nah.
So when I wanted to become an educator, the first thing I did was take a course on how to be a good teacher, how to become a proper educator, and learn simple theories such as the VARC theory, which is you learn, process, and understand information be through visual, auditory, reading and writing, or kinesthetic mechanisms. And if you understand which one is your strength and how the others work for you, you are so much better at understanding and processing information. Now, school systems are set up to do it usually just one way, whereas in an education platform, you can actually bring several ways.
Yeah.
So a good example with us, we do actually show information, but then we definitely pull that information back out from people through active learning. And then we have kinesthetic style learning, where you're actually tasting and sampling beers, whilst actually linking everything that we just learned from the ingredients back into what's in the glass. So I love that process of bringing the best way of educating people into a room, because I struggled so much with it. I hated the fact that some of my friends who were easily getting 90% or above, whilst I was sitting at the 60% mark, I was just thinking to myself, why am I not getting it as easily? Now I understand. I'm like, let's see if we can actually make it easier on more people by just having that simple knowledge at your fingertips. So that's where I've kind of got to, you would say now. Educator, assessor, but it's the education side it was great to meet Chris last year. I needed someone who would actually be brave enough to sign up to someone who's never done the courses before, let me become their educator and actually take the course with my hands and really actually run it and lead it. And it's been great. It's been a great partnership.
Yeah, no, it's worked really well. And the other thing is that when you are learning, you're talking about different styles of learning, but even when you're doing work at home, for example, one of the things we do is we invest an awful lot of time and effort into creating materials to help students. So when you're doing the course, you get your standard book and various things and off you go. But we like the first thing we did with the beer course was we created a lot of flashcards, mocks. Some people learn by just doing questions all the time. So we just created hundreds of questions, mock exams, flashcards, all sorts of things. And we're just at the beginning of our beer journey in terms of creating materials to help students, because as Jamie said, everybody learns differently. And it's really important to give people the tools that they can learn in the way that suits them. You can't, in classroom, we've got to deliver certain materials, but outside of classroom, you just give them all the tools and just knock yourself out. And the nice thing we've found with the beer courses so far anyway, is the guys and the girls who are on it have really just gone for it. They've used all the tools and Jamie's got one of the highest pass rates at the moment, but I think not just because he's really, really good, but also I think it's because I was surprised, because you think of beer people and go, oh yeah, they just like to drink beer. But when you give them a chance to learn, they're just like, whoa, they're into it, hardcore. They love it. There was that Chinese lady we had, and she was just, what was her name? Do you remember? I can't remember.
No, you tested me, because her name started one way, but then you used one of her middle names.
Yeah.
So she sort of had that change. There's actually someone I've met recently whose middle name was Jade. I had to call him Jade. But anyway,
but she was just amazing. She was just like soaked it all up, and she was hardcore, man.
Exactly. I would also, the thing that really appealed to me as well was that Chris, as he's already covered, he loves technology.
Yeah.
So this is one of the very few courses, I think the only beer course, where we can be set up exactly as we are now, where you'll have two cameras linked into the classroom, so you can see the rest of the students and the teacher. You'll have all the beers sent to your home, so full bottles and cans for everything to taste. And you'll be drawn into the classroom to actually be involved in the tasting and be involved the whole way through. I mean, I did one a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, with somebody in Germany.
Yeah.
So we got the beers to him and he sourced some. But it's such a great way of being able to bring people in without having to ask them to pay for enormous travel costs.
Yeah.
We ship all the beers to you, which in level 2 is 30 beers. So it's quite a lot to sort of get landed.
Three weeks to get through 30 beers in class.
Oh, you know what? See,
what do you drink the second week?
Exactly. Honestly, the trying not to drink those beers would be an absolute mission. But like for people like what is the kind of what are the type of beers you're sending? Like just to give people listening like an outline of just like what could they expect in terms of the beers that are delivering or the breweries that they may expect to experience while learning.
No, sure. So level 1 is 10 beers, level 2 is 30 beers, just to be clear on that. So there's two different types of courses. Level 1 is a 1-day course, level 2 is a 3-day course.
Right.
We divide all the beers in WSET into different sections. So you have malt-driven, hop-driven, and yeast-driven. And then you can also go to mixed fermentation, sour, and also look at aged beers. So we effectively put different beers in different sections in order to allow you to learn as you go through. So always start with malt, then go to hop, then go to yeast, for example. So the beers that you're going to get are supposed to be of the highest quality, which we do actually do taste assessments of them before. A very, very good example, we will always use a very, very good Lambic. Now, we have used Mariage Parfait recently because it's a very consistent, high quality Lambic Gers that you can actually put in the classroom and nearly everybody's going to get the more consistent results, even though spontaneous fermentation, it will go left, go right from time to time. But then it also would bring you into having, for example, Iyengar Celebrator is one of our first beers that we actually start with. So what's that, 6.5% or 7%, full-on dark lager style that effectively brings in a lot more of those malt-driven aromas, but also introduces you to that slight warming sensation you would experience from the beer. Very, very heavy on the caramel, really, really nice chocolate toasted notes on it as well. But all the while, what we're going to be doing is exposing you to, okay, you got base malts, the purpose of base malt, specialty malts. So we'll go through highly kilned, dark roasted, caramel malts, smoked malts. And we'll actually discuss not only how they're made, the malting process, then the kilning process at the end, how they're separated out, the expected aroma characteristics, whether it might change a bitterness profile. Then you've got unmalted grains like wheat. So that's going to add more head retention, haze, and also a smooth, creamy mouthfeel to the finish of the beer. So when you start reading labels and looking at beers that you're about to test and try, you already have a picture of what that beer should taste like or smell like before you actually put it to your lips or put it to your nose. So that's how the course is effectively set up to work. I mean, for the barrel age section, we usually speak to Siren and see what they've got coming out of their barrel age store. So we had the wine barrel aged barley wine last time at 12.5%, didn't we? I can't remember the name.
I wasn't on that course.
But it was insanely good. It was absolutely delicious. We did use also Siren Santo as a really good example of a contemporary dry hopped lager because it's so local in Reading. It's really, really fresh. And you can ask them when it's been canned and actually get it within the first 3 months. So that profile is incredibly big and boisterous.
And is that aspect, sorry to interrupt you, is that aspect important for you guys as well to make sure that the beers you're sending out to the students are as fresh as can be in terms of the canning? You don't, because I can only assume you don't want a beer that's been in can for too long, or to kind of flip-flop my own kind of point there is you want to make sure it's at least being, the cold chain is there at least.
Yeah, we work with a single supplier who effectively distributes all the beer for us because that makes it a lot easier for everyone that's involved in our chain. They cold chain store and then they send it out to you. Now, in terms of beers that are affected by their hop profile and therefore can go through staling or oxidation early or have dry hops, yes, we try and make sure we always source them as fresh as possible and make sure that they're cold chained. For other beer styles, it can be quite different. I mean, you were there, I think, when we had Saison du Pont, one of the most renowned Saisons around the world. And it basically tasted like Werther's Original with huge diacetyl issues that clearly had not actually come out through the secondary fermentation in the bottle or in the maturation tanks. So it was a very, very bad example of a Saison on the day.
But to be fair, the best beers are always the faulty ones.
Yeah.
No, they are, because that's the
quite a lot to
moment
talk
of
about.
pure learning that you don't really get. When you get someone who knows what's going on and there's something wrong with it, and they say, this is the cause, this is what's going on, get a whiff of that. You know, and that's, to me, when I do wine courses and I get dodgy wines, I'm like, yes, this is the best bet, because this is the moment that someone will really learn how to spot that problem.
Suppose it's easier to probably like educate people on what they should be tasting, and then, like you said there, when you get something that is a mistake or something has went wrong or it's been oxidized, that's, like you said, that's when you're getting excited and go. So you can go, all right, we've mentioned like when beers go wrong and you get X, Y, and Z, that's what it is. Like that cardboard kind of taste, that's what we're talking about. So yeah, I can understand why you get excited about bad beers and bad wines.
we actually give examples to try at the end of the course. We do light strike and we do oxidation alongside controlled samples. So we prepare bottles that have been exposed to oxygen for 3 weeks, and we expose a bottle that's been exposed to UV rays for a week. And quite literally, it just smells like cat piss. It's absolutely ghastly. But
that's always my worry. Is again, sorry to interrupt. My thing is when is trying to spot how many beers have I had in the past that have been off, and trying to judge off flavors. I think is a huge blind spot that I've got, and it's so. Definitely. For me, it's difficult. I've tried a fair few. I've thought loads were great. I've thought some were okay. And I'm like, I wonder how many of them, because I couldn't tell you the difference, or I don't think I can tell you the difference in it. That's probably where I would need, or a lot of places I need help. One of them being in tasting beer, but would be off flavors, like how to describe and define and pinpoint and nail an off flavor. And we've spoken about it. We've spoken about it with Johnny Garrett. We've spoken about it with anybody and everybody from brewers themselves to beer experts, and now the sommelier. And that's always the bit I worry about: is how the hell would I tell if something's off or not? And if it's as blatantly obvious as it tastes like cat piss, if it's been exposed to that for X amount, then I might have a bash. But that's maybe the problem, is I've never come across something that's been so
bad,
blatantly poorly stored. That you then can't, if you've never had it full, like it's like if you've never been exposed to formaldehyde, you'll never figure out what that, you'll not know that smell until it's there. But see, once it's there, you can, like, it lives in your memory forever.
Right. If you taste it at its worst, if you taste it at its worst, then when you get a beer and you can get a trace of that. You can taste it a tiny little bit. You can say, "Oh well, this is maybe on the edge,
maybe
or
that's
starting to go, or whatever." You know, question.
How many blind tastings on the Craft Beer channel I've watched and been thrown off when he goes, "Well, that's got X, Y, and Z." I'm like, "Where are you? All right, where are you getting that from?"
I had a back to the sort of technical aspect of the course and stuff. Are you expecting students to have any kind of prior beer knowledge, experience? You know, we're all sort of hobby, as you said a minute ago, that kind of hobby drinker. You know, we're maybe slightly on the more experienced end of that, but by no means experts. We know how to make beer and how beer is made, but what kind of level are you expecting your students to be when they come to your level 1 or level 2 courses?
So a level 1 course assumes you know nothing at all. You may have drunk beer before, you may be teetotal. It's that type of course. If you have never really drunk beer and you know nothing about beer, we'd probably get you to just read through the textbook a little bit beforehand. But otherwise, if you're a reasonable drinker, you can normally just turn up, do the course, and do the exam at the end, and learn quite a lot. But it's really geared towards the novice, beer curious, but not really knowing anything about beer. Level 2 is a little bit more detailed. It goes into a lot more. You can, in theory, just jump straight into level 2. Just for you guys to know, level 2 is officially, because it's WST course, is officially a GCSE in beer. So
yes.
No, literally, you could write GCSEs, English, maths, beer. You know, it counts. It literally counts.
Yeah.
It literally counts. So that gives you an idea of the level of the level 2. It's more. If you're just an occasional beer drinker, you probably find it's a little bit too much. But if you're into your beer, but you don't really know why you like a beer, or you know a little bit about how it's brewed, but you don't really understand it or anything like that, then that level 2 course is absolutely perfect. For you guys, I'm not sure if it would be suitable for you guys. There's certainly a lot of stuff you'd get out of it, like the staling and all that type of thing. I'm not sure. I don't know your beer knowledge. I suspect it's quite a bit more than mine. And I've done the level 2 beer course, but yeah, I think
alcoholic.
yeah,
I can pretty much sum it up as self-taught.
self-taught, yeah, experimentation, yeah, enthusiastic amateurs is the way I normally describe
100%.
it. Yeah,
you had it right at hobbyist.
Yeah, I think a level 2 course is probably you'd like be the most advanced that would go on the course. Although we've had camera guys on there and things like that in the past. So I think anywhere from up to you guys, maybe in terms of knowledge, would be fine for the level 2 course. What do you think, Jamie?
Well, the way that we've sort of discussed it before is that level 2 is for people who don't have prior knowledge as well, because it goes through all the basics.
Mhm.
So it covers the basics in the same way that you would in level 1. But for instance, in level 1, we talk about the fact that there is an ale yeast and a lager yeast and mixed fermentation. But in level 2, you'll be expected to learn that the Latin names are Saccharomyces cerevisiae, Saccharomyces pasterianus, and obviously that mixed fermentation is a combination of ale yeast, other yeast, particularly Brettanomyces, and a combination of other bacteria such as lactic acid and acetic acid.
Mm-hmm.
So level 1 covers the same information, but retracts a lot more of the advanced information. So if you did level 1, you go into level 2 going, I know 25% of this, but here's the other 75. So you can go in with no prior knowledge, but it's probably a bigger jump for someone that has no prior knowledge at the same time. You guys, I mean, when I did it, it's fascinating, the course. Even just going into the malting process, understanding exactly what happens from the point of steeping to germination to kilning, understanding how crystal malt is made to effectively create that nice sugary sweet caramel dried fruit candy floss profile. And it's because they treat it differently to all the other malts. If you don't know, they effectively take what's called green malt, which is when it's just finished going through the germination stage. They put that green malt straight into a roasting drum. Now, by going into the roasting drum, that activates the enzymes and puts it up to a higher heat. Those enzymes start converting starch inside the grain into sugar. Now, because the grain contains an outer shell called a husk, the sugar is kept inside the husk. So now they actually take the sugary liquid that's caught inside the husk, expose that to a high temperature, that crystallizes the sugars, therefore creating the aroma profiles that you anticipate to be caramel, dried fruits, candy floss. But by understanding the process and recognizing the color that you'd see in the beer, caramel particularly produces a red hue in beer. You can look at a beer and go, caramel, potentially dried fruits, potentially candy floss. It's like your little cheat sheet. It just tees you up whenever you're tasting a beer, that your mind is switched on with those blinkers that give you a more very, very objective view to how you're going to taste it. And then you get to actually assess whether it's quality or not. And on the on those off flavors. So let me ask you guys: have you ever tasted or smelt? Cooked cabbage or cooked sweet corn in a beer, particularly lagers, which is called DMS or dimethyl sulfide? Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Cool. Do you have any idea where it comes from?
Not got a clue.
Not a clue.
Cool. Typically, it comes from lager, pilsner malts, base malts, typically lager and pilsner malts. So it's a compound that comes from malt. Now, the way to get rid of it is there's a stage in the brewing process called wort boiling, or just boiling, most brewers just call it. And if you expose the DMS to a vigorous boil, it kills off a lot of the DMS compounds, therefore meaning you have a nice clean beer. But there are a few styles in the world that accept DMS, international pale lagers, American lagers, light lagers, and German pilsners. But a Czech pilsner accepts low levels of what's called diacetyl. And diacetyl is a compound that's produced during fermentation that's supposed to be dissolved and eaten during maturation. So you can get diacetyl in, for instance, Czech pilsners and in bitters, but at low levels it's acceptable, but you wouldn't want it at a high level. Now, part of the job for anyone that's learning about this tasting is to understand what is acceptable at a low level and why it's there and what could have gone wrong. Now, if you understand it's part of the maturation process, you're looking at two things. If it's a Czech Pilsner, the Czech Pilsner is all about brewing process, put into a keg, put into a bottle or a can. There's nothing you can do. What about cask beer? Cask beer has secondary fermentation and maturation happening inside the cask. So if you crack open a cask as a landlord licensee, you pour it and test it, and it does have a little bit too much diacetyl, you can seal it back up and continue that secondary fermentation and maturation to try and allow the diacetyl to actually be eaten by the yeast, therefore cleaning out the beer. So understanding those off flavors, when they're acceptable, when they're not, it effectively, those are allowed in beer. But let's switch to one that's not allowed. Oxidation or staling is a key problem. Scotty was talking about it. How many beers have we tried where we kind of went, doesn't quite taste right to me today? There's something a bit off about this. It's not fresh. Sorry, Callum, what were you saying?
Just saying there's something, you can tell that there's something wrong, but you don't have the knowledge or the experience to be able to pinpoint and say that's what's wrong and that's why it's wrong. And
it's that thing where you effectively need to keep a beer cold, and you want to drink it young and fresh, especially if it's dry hopped, because I think I said earlier, dry hopping produces some lovely oil character, gives the beer lovely oils that give some lovely pronounced aromatics, but those aromatics are less stable than those that have gone through the boil process. So effectively, if you don't drink them fresh, they start to fade very quickly, and that is staling. The worst case staling is usually when it's been exposed to oxygen for too long. And you said it, Gab, it starts to smell like wet cardboard or wet paper. Now, we've all had it in a beer before, and we've got different sensitivities. But if you try a beer, especially from a brand that you love, let's pull out, I know we all like Beak, yes?
Oh.
Yeah. Beak, fantastic, sensational. Never had a bad beer from them. But there might be a time when I get a can that's 7 months old, been left on a shelf for 6 of those months. And there's something about it. Now, do I go and blame the brewer? Absolutely not. No. I shouldn't. But unfortunately, the way that some beers are stored in the UK and around the world, I should say, it doesn't do the service to what those brewers are trying to deliver to us back at home or in the venue. So it's a bit of a shame, but understanding that you shouldn't blame the brewer, and this is the reason why, that's having a power when it comes to tasting your beers. That a little bit of extra knowledge that takes you to the level where you can confidently say, "Nah, I love you, and that's not your fault."
Yeah, 100%. There's been numerous times where we've had beers from breweries, like you mentioned, that we've loved, and we're like, there's something not right there. And we're lucky enough to speak to them and go back to them and go, by the way, that batch might not be right, but same time, like you said, you can't always fault the brewery because it's where the beer has been stored. One beer that has probably hopefully been stored very well, and I want to make sure we all get a chance to have a sample of it, because this conversation could go on forever. Genuinely could do, and I want to make sure I steer us in the right direction. And we all
drink. I was going to say, Gav, I wish, and I'm hoping you're the same. Your significant other had the same opinion of, it's not great, but I know why, and it's not your fault. That's everyone's wish, surely, isn't it?
Genuinely, this is 5 guys in a pub now in the corner, thinking nobody can hear them talk.
That's the only thing. That's the only thing I'll go for, is your significant other to say, "I know why, and it's not your fault."
It's not your fault. It's not your fault. One day it'll happen. I've noticed that Scott and Callum have opened a can of it, and it's the Budvar Dark Lager. I know we've all got cans of it, so I think we'll crack them open and have a Sommelier 101. Incidentally, for people listening, just to give that context, like Jamie said, he is a sommelier in the UK. There's only over 200 sommeliers in the UK. FYI,
in the world.
So it is in the world.
In the world.
So it's
in
not.
The world.
It's not. All right, Jeremy. It's not something you come across often, so take note.
Hence our, I would say, what is that? A barrage of questions. You would definitely call that a barrage of questions about various different.
We'll put it this way. Usually, our let's go around the table lasts 5-10 minutes.
Interesting because you guys are pouring out the bottle and we've got it in can. So that'd be
That'll
interesting
be-
if there's any difference. So there
That'll
it
be
is.
very
Yeah, so
interesting.
we've had Budvar on the podcast before. We're apologists. We love Budvar. I personally think in the UK, certainly in the supermarket aisle, there are very few lagers that come close to Budvar, and the fact that you can get it for the price that you can get it for is just it's massively in its favour.
Yeah.
And when we tried the darker side of Budvar, it was just a revelation.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just an absolutely stunning beer for me. Anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
Long live Czechia,
Try,
state support of Budvar.
Indeed.
Try mixing the two. It's even better.
Well,
Oh,
Ooh,
sugar.
there's a
that one in the what?
right at the,
Yeah, the
right at
original
gate.
lager in the dark. They actually do it over in Czech Republic. I've had it at Pilsner. I've had it at Budvar. Who did you have from Budvar? Did you have Adam?
Yes.
It was
No, it wasn't. It
no,
was.
Rad.
No, it wasn't.
Ah, right. Well, Adam's an old friend of mine from a long, long time ago. He used to rep and sell beer to me, and then I've just stayed in contact with him. Very, very good lad. But I think he's still at Budvar today.
Why have I had a brain fart?
I love those.
Okay. It'll be interesting to get beer fridge side of things and then smelly
Redeem.
side of things.
It was
Redeem,
Redeem.
yes, thank you. Bugger.
Their
Um,
global it was I think I'm not sure he is any longer, but he
No, I
was
think he still is.
their global ambassador for Budweiser Budvar, and we went through all that was the year of the lager campaign.
Yes, it certainly was. So again, just to mention, the reason why we've picked this beer is for people who listen to the podcast. This is the beer you can get in Lidl's, you can get in Home Bargains, you can get. It's basically almost anywhere. Maybe not Tesco, so not everywhere. But it's $1.79 at best, and you can get a 500ml bottle, and then you've got the 400ml cans as well that are available in different places. So, if you listen this far, and I'll make sure I put an Instagram post out before we release this episode to make sure you go and grab some so you can drink along, so to speak, and you can send us a message with your thoughts and on what you smelt and drank and what your thoughts were on the beer. Gilroy, I know you've been quenching it away and making that
Nursing.
liquid disappear. I know you're nursing it for the reason because you're waiting for this moment. I know that because otherwise it would have been gone. You've got the right vessel for it though.
Yes, I've got my Budvar.
Oh,
I've got
I left mine
Brandy.
at home. I love
Redeem.
that glass.
Gave us very kindly made sure we were gifted with these along with some t-shirts and stuff, and there's no better vessel to drink Budvar from. It's perfect for a reason.
It's
And,
beautiful glass.
Right, I am. You
Oh,
Scott,
that's
wannabe
fine.
Smelier. You're probably the person of the podcast who is more eloquent with their language in terms of
Ugh.
describing beers. Go
For
on then,
both.
mate. Yeah, well, aye.
Yeah. I love kind of Schwarzbier or dark lager anyway. I think it's got the perfect combination of has that kind of roasty, that kind of almost interesting flavour while still being incredibly thirst quenching and Moorish at the same time. It's something you can drink as quickly or slowly as you like. I don't think it is harmed as much as other lagers or other styles of lager, if you like, than kind of warming up a wee bit in the glass. I don't think it bothers it too much. So you can kind of take your time with it if you like. It's just, I think it's really thirst quenching and really Moorish, and it adds a bit of depth of flavour that you don't get with a regular lager, and it gives for those that maybe do drink kind of darker beers on occasion or frequently. It gives us that it tickles that part of your palate that is looking for that kind of depth of flavour that you wouldn't otherwise get, while still giving you the thirst quenching Moorishness that you expect from good lager. So that's why I like it. We've sought it at loads of places, many beer festivals, wherever it's on. There was a bar opened up not far away from us in Falkirk that we made a beeline for because they not only had a side pour with a proper kind of the proper way of pouring Czech beer, but also they had Budvar Dark on, and it was stupendous. So it's a great experience every time you get to try it.
Did they get
just-
a tank?
It wasn't a tank. The Bohemia in Edinburgh does. It's one of the only places that does, or one of the few places anyway, that does tank Budvar. But it's the regular kind. It's not been dark in there yet, but it was kegged. But it was lovely. Anyway, I'm not the person to be telling us what I should.
No. I want to also get Chris's view. He puts himself as a non-beer gentleman. He's more of a wine guy. First of all, one, have you had this beer before? And two, your impressions of it.
Okay, so I've not had this beer before, and I don't think I've actually had many dark lagers. I've had a couple in the past, but I've always been a little bit reticent about dark beers, partly because of the alcohol level. I'm a session beer drinker. You know, I'm more of a volume guy, so I'm always looking for like a really nice beer around 3-4%, somewhere around there. So normally a lot of the stouts and the imperials and all that sort of stuff, they all start to creep up on the high end for me, and they're not as fresh. I like freshness in my beers, and I find some of the more darker beers can be a little bit heavy for me. Whereas this beer, the effervescence, the carbonation on this really lifts the beer in your mouth, and it almost sparkles in your mouth, which, because you're looking at it thinking, oh, this is going to be like a stout, but it's not. It's so much lighter in the mouth, and it's still got that sort of smoky flavor to it. So I think the textural feel in the mouth to me is probably the most interesting part for me, because it is a dark beer, yet it still feels quite light in the mouth. And the alcohol's 5.2%. So it's, 4.7%. So it's not super high. So for me, it's not too bad at all, actually. And that was the one thing I didn't like. Well, when we did the level 2 course together, we'd finish all the beers, and Jamie would head off, and because we were running them in the studio when I did the course, so I was left with 10 half bottles, and I was like, happy days. So I mean, like, hoovering.
Don't you worry, you get away, I'll take you up.
It was he was driving. It was not, you can't carry half bottles. So I would just be minesweeping away, and I'll drink all the light ones. I'll get to the dark beers, and I'll be like, okay, I have to drink this anyway. I'm not wasting good beer, even though it's not the style I liked. And I think I must have drunk. It feels like the level 2, even though there's 30 beers, it feels like there's 40 dark beers on that course. And it just, by the end of it, I've got quite used to dark beers, but they're too heavy for me just to enjoy normally. Whereas this beer, I kind of like. I think it's got that lightness that I appreciate.
By the end that you'd pass level 10.
I think I'd have passed out, mate.
I love it. Excellent stuff. Jamie, yourself, I assume you've had this beer. Your thoughts on it? We are massive advocates for this beer and the brew.
I mean, I love Budvar Dark. I've known it for many, many years, and I do enjoy it. I often forget about it. It's probably my cardinal sin. Sort of don't see it in my regular radar to pick up. But about the beer, let's go through sort of quite an objective tasting, if you will, just sort of like knock things down. First things first, it's a lager, so it's not going to produce any yeast aromas. You won't get any esters or phenolic characteristics. Lager yeast don't typically produce those profiles. So is it going to be malts-driven or hop-driven? Well, it's most certainly going to be malts-driven. You can see that from the color leaning in towards the copper suggests that they've got a combination of dark roasted malts, some caramel malt, maybe some highly kiln malts. Those three types of specialty malt typically produce aromas that are sort of adding a little bit more heat into the mix. So think like digestive biscuits, graham crackers, toasted nuts, toasted bread, baked bread, burnt bread, dried fruits, the caramels, maybe some coffee or some chocolate or some charred or toast aromas. That's already starting to think, okay, the color tells me this. The other thing I know about Budvar is they love doing decoction brewing, and decoction brewing is when you take part of the wort out, expose it to a higher heat. That basically goes through the Maillard reaction, the Browning reaction, which creates much more of a more defined characteristic in the beer. Effectively, think of it as if like it's not sweetening is in caramelization. It's amino acids and sugars combining, so it can create different profiles. Think of it like Maillard reaction exists in, for instance, our gravy as another example, but you wouldn't necessarily say gravy is always sweet. So it can have that sort of savory brownness to it that had some heat applied to it, but doesn't necessarily come across as being sweet by definition. So Pick up the nose. Immediately, what I get, without a doubt, is a lovely, lovely toasted baked bread with a really nice crust. I'm not going to say it's like a ciabatta crust or anything like that. It's more like just your plain crust that you've got on bread that's just gone through the toaster. And it's not really got much of a chocolate or a coffee profile, but there is a sort of charred toast element right at the top note. So you've got that little bit of extra profile that almost creates like a dryness on the back of your palate, which is very different to having an original Pilsner, original Budvar, which is quite clean. And what you were talking about there with the high level of carbonation is that actually creates the rest on the palate. So when you're drinking a dark lager, there's an opportunity for potentially the residual sugars that are remaining in the beer to actually stick to your palate and actually create a longer finish than might be usual for a lager. So by having a higher level of CO2 carbonation, it refreshes you, resets your palate. You can go again, enjoy the beer again and again and again. And then in terms of quality, in this particular style, you'll be looking for any diacetyl, which is like that rancid butterscotch characteristic. There's none of that. You could get, for example, something like maybe acetaldehyde, which is green apples, emulsion paint, or raw pumpkin. That's not there. That's been cleaned out because Budvar like to do, I think it's 60-day maturation period guaranteed. So they really clean their beers out so there's no off flavors coming through in the finish of it. So the overall drinkability of this is absolutely perfect. The thing that would probably throw people is this beer going to have too much of a coffee, chocolate, toasted note that overpowers this beer? And the way they combine it with that low-level sort of bready, not overly sweet, but bready, baked bread, biscuity characteristic, mixed in with a high level of carbonation, just makes this beer so refreshing despite its color. That's probably how I sum it up.
Basically, it's fizzy on the mouth and light, and you like it.
Thank you.
That'll do. The bit I was missing, and Gavin, hopefully this will spark a bit of nostalgia in Gavin, is if you've been north of the border before, we've got in Central Scotland in particular, and I know every place in the UK has got a different word for a bread roll, but rolls in Scotland we've got a penchant for a thing called a well-fired roll, which is effectively a bread roll, but it's overdone on the top.
Yep.
Cool.
So it's almost black, like it's almost charcoaly on the very, very top, and then it breaks into that bready, and that's the descriptor I was missing when I was describing what I was getting for the beer. Is it's well-fired rolls, which is hopefully those in Scotland will know what I mean by a well-fired roll. There's a Morton's rolls in Central Scotland in particular is a if your local convenience store, if you like, has got a go-to Morton's rolls in Scotland, you've won a watch in terms of purchasing your property and things like that. If you walk around and you find that it's Morton's rolls that are there, you can tell them right away. They're almost, it's mahogany / black on the top. And you have to ask for them. They're the first things that go in the morning. Every 60 plus year old shuffles along quick sharp of a Sunday morning for give me half a dozen well-fired rolls, please. And they're the first.
Depends how many Budvar darks they've had the night before.
100%, yeah. But they're along there. It's whatever your newspaper of choice is, and half a dozen well-fired rolls, please. And
sounds like the perfect descriptor.
100%
perfect descriptor.
Yeah,
and look, a lot of what we do when it comes to food or drink is flavor memory. You know, you have negative and positive memory association. And if you say the word barnyard to a person, everyone's brain's going to go to a different place. So you have to get a little bit more specific, for example, when describing some of the mixed fermentations, and say horse blanket, because that's very specific. And if you've ever experienced that aroma, you've pretty much got it. You've got the nail on the head. If you say barnyard, it's a bit more open, because you're probably all leaning towards things like hay or even manure, for example, which isn't pleasant. So we have to play the flavor memory game very carefully in the classroom, and also when we're actually judging beers. So
100%. If your closest you've ever been is what is that coming off the fields, then barnyard probably isn't going to be it's not great connotation. But if you're horse blanket, if you're a horse person, which you normally get, you can tell if if Barber is in or around your general personage, then you have a good shout, and you'll know what that means. But yeah, if your only thing is what is that they're spraying, and why is the wind decided to blow my direction? Yeah, Barnyard isn't going to be great in terms of like, what you're looking for in mixed ferm beers, is it? That's a good shout. Memory plays such a huge, it's such a huge part in nostalgia and things like that, and what you're tasting.
Yeah,
I mean,
when I was a young lad, my nana, I had a crazy old nana, but she used to take me for walks up in the hills in the morning, just mainly so my parents could have a shag, I'm pretty sure. But just 7 o'clock in the morning, we're up in the hills, and it'd be like all you could smell is thyme everywhere. It was just thyme as you walk, because it was wild thyme everywhere.
Yeah.
And now I just love the smell of thyme. And if I get a wine or a beer with thyme in it, I'd be like all over that like a rash, because I've created a memory hook that, and a really positive experience. Now, someone who's had a negative experience with thyme will go, oh, that's the worst smell ever. But because I love thyme, it just is something that I really look forward to in a product.
What's so like Jamie, that was like almost a kind of sommeliers kind of view, kind of diagnostic of a beer to some degree. For someone listening to the podcast who wants to kind of go down that route, but at the same time feels like they're a beginner, what are the kind of key kind of 101s to be like beer tasting that they should be looking out for?
As in things to do on a consistent basis?
Yes.
Okay. It's a good question.
Without ruining your course.
No, not at all. Look, I think that people that come to us have probably tried beer before and are getting curious. And maybe you need to get curious before you actually step into a course program. I'll tell you my experience and how I think that framed and worked for me. So I tried a lot of beers. I used to keep count of it, and I'd talk to my friends about it. But I never really got to dissect, understand, and profile and break down these beers before I started bringing in some knowledge. And no disrespect to the courses that I bid on. It was a book called Taste What You're Missing by a food scientist called Barb Stuckey that changed everything for me. Because the truth of the matter is, if you don't know how this works and how you process the information, you sometimes lack the confidence and just that bit of knowledge to take you into the realm of going, I do get that, and now I know why. And I would definitely 100% say that trying beers is a very, very key element of getting involved in them, because you need to, for instance, I'm not saying like go to your venue and try the same beer 5 days on the trot.
Yeah.
I'm saying for fun, get 5 lagers from different producers and put them next to each other and try them and see what's different and what you do and don't like. But if you have a little bit of prior knowledge about how your system works, the nasal cavity, your taste receptors, you can start to process that information and start to articulate things a lot better. That's my 101 sort of leading in. And then you start to require, okay, I know that I'm getting something that smells bready. Doesn't smell like it's toast. So what is that? And how is that created? And that's where the course will steer you into breadcrumb, which is created by base malt, which smells that way because it's never exposed to a high enough heat to go through the Maillard reaction, which effectively creates that profile. And the reason why they don't expose it to that heat is because base malt is what you need to create alcohol, because it creates enzymes and starches. You see, I go down funnels all the time. It's like rabbit holes. But this is where like you'll have the base bit of information about, I like this bready aroma. I will be able to direct you into understanding why that aroma is there and how it was created. So whenever you look at any beer, like the Duvel we might try in a second, the first thing you'll see is the color and go, okay, that color is indicative of breadcrumb, water cracker, light honey, and potentially also some breadcrumb, water cracker, light honey, and bread dough. Those are the 4 indicative aromas linked into base malt. And that's what Duvel looks like, because it's basically golden color, hasn't got an amber link to it. So that's my 101. Make sure you try and test beers, do experimentations, but do take in a little bit of knowledge to understand how this works.
The one thing I've said, sorry, Chris, the one thing I've said to people who've asked me a similar-ish question, whether it be in tap rooms or bottle shops, is that kind of old TV show, that kind of catchphrase mentality of see what you see, what are you tasting, what are you smelling, just say it. There's not a wrong answer. But you'll get through those bits, or try like single hop beers, so that then you can understand what a citrus hop does, or what a mosaic hop does to a beer. And then when you pick up a beer that has mosaic, citra, El Dorado, or whatever it is, you already have in your heads what you should expect. So it's like you said, it's kind of getting a base knowledge in your head of what to expect. But yeah, I've told a lot of people, just say what you see, especially the wife. She's started diving into beers. She's a massive fan of Beacon on Bard down here on the south coast. She's got 2 favorite beers already, and yeah, every time I go there, I have to buy at least 1 or 2 of Parade or Juicy, and it's because she absolutely loves it. She knows what she likes. She has said what she likes and said what she sees or tasted, and yeah, it's that. It seems almost kind of obvious to some degree that you should be just saying what you're tasting, but to some people it seems like it's to kind of your point, Chris, that you were saying, I just like to drink lager. But at the same time, there is differences between all these lagers, like the Budvars and all the other lagers you can get. There are subtle differences, whether it be yeast or whatever they may be using. Might be interesting, a little bit of hop. So yeah, say what you see.
I've taught thousands of students, and wine, not beer. And I do believe that context gives confidence.
Yeah.
If you know what to expect, you're much more confident to say it. And the biggest problem I have when I'm in class with wine people is getting them confident enough to say what they want to say. Quite often they're a little bit afraid to do it, and just giving them the confidence is really important. And you don't get confidence just by, well, some people are just absolutely confident with no idea. But most people need to have some sort of, just understanding before they really jump in. And I think with a bit of knowledge, that really helps, and it gives you that confidence to really engage with the product properly.
Yeah, and that's carry on, James. Sorry.
No, sorry. You're continuing the point.
No, it was nothing important. Trust me.
I always think it's important. I was going to ask if everybody has Duvel.
Yes.
Opened.
Okay, great. When we're ready, I have an experiment.
All right, before you do that, I just want to comment on the color, because it reminds me very much of a Saturday morning after a really hard Friday night on the Terps.
Yep.
Yes. Yep. No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Understand that. Yep.
Exactly that. So yes, the next beer up in selection is the 8.4% Duvel, the Belgian Strong Blonde. Is the one which, just to say before we deep dive into this, for the price, it is a ridiculously good beer.
Yes.
FYI.
Approachable.
So yes. Well, yeah.
Well, it is approachable from a wallet perspective.
Oh, from a wallet perspective,
us being Scottish is at least 60% of the decision-making process, is it not? You've got to be open and honest about things.
That's very true, mate. Very true.
There are sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes stereotypes are stereotypes because there's often an element of truth.
Yeah, well.
So you deep fry everything then, yes?
Well, 60% of things.
I have heard that in the podcast before. You guys talking about it's not real food until it's deep fried or something like that. I was just like, 60%
of the time, all the time, you've got to deep fry.
just off the topic, how do you feel about air fryers then? Because
really, it's like daft, mate.
Yep.
Okay.
Air fryers always on the go.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not that big on the. I mean, I doubt hugely the science behind it, but I've managed to trick my arteries into feeling a bit better about it, so that's fine. That's half the battle, right? and no me, because I wouldn't deign to let them test me at all. But I did. My partner did get blood
Question that
test results back recently that said they were not in any way had excellent cholesterol, and we eat almost the same things. So I'm taking that as, I mean, the beer intake is probably the difference, and also the things that follow the beer, which is
Yeah.
definitely no air fried bad foods. But I can't be that far away. We eat the same thing often enough that I'm taking it that must mean by proxy that my cholesterol results are just as good. So I'm taking that.
I met someone who had good cholesterol once. Mine's the same.
Yeah, I met them. I've had a conversation with them for 15 minutes. So my cholesterol scores must be great.
Exactly. It's perfect. Right, I'm intrigued, Jamie. This experiment,
What's this
you're
experiment?
teasing
What
with
are we
me.
getting? What are we
Okay,
getting?
it's a relatively simple thing, but basically, one of the ways that I love to work with people, this is actually a course material. It's just something that I do with friends, and I have done as part of my own sort of training, is to separate out the orthonasal smelling and the retronasal smelling, and really understand how those play a part. So, what I'm going to ask you to do, and I'll demonstrate it first, is very simply: you hold your nose and keep it closed. Drink the liquid and swallow it down. After you finish swallowing, wait for about 3 to 5 seconds and then release your nose. That is you experiencing retronasal smelling. That's only aromas that travel through the back of your mouth up into the olfactory system, hitting what's called the nasal cavity. Afterwards, we'll drink the beer as normal.
The thing you'll notice is that while you got your nose held, you won't taste anything. It won't have any flavor at all.
It very much reduces your experience of the aroma. I just want to see how you experience it, though. So,
This is good audio content.
All together now. Wow, that is completely different.
now when you release it, you can get a hit
Yeah, you do.
of some of the actual aromas that were intended for the beer right at the front. Now, if you want to reset your nose, do you know about resetting your nose?
Oh Christ, no.
No.
Okay, good quiz question, this one. What's the one thing in the world that every human cannot smell? You can't smell yourself.
Oh, see, to be honest,
No, you went that.
Yep.
There for a second.
It's been a hot day, mate. Keep your arms down.
So yeah, when you want to reset your nose, you effectively smell your skin, your arm, not your armpit. Don't do that. you smell your arm, and it just resets the olfactory system, so it goes back to neutral again, as close as you can. Really, really good when you've been drinking a lot of like very, very intense hot profile beers, and you just want to get the next one lined up. You just smell your arm, and it resets, so that all the aromas are cleaned out again, so they become more three-dimensional.
That's amazing. What a great.
No need for sorbet like beers anymore. Like
Crackers.
just smell
that's
around.
Mark's go-to.
Just smell your arm.
That's his Mark's, and I'll come back to this later.
So now we actually go back and smell the beer through the nose
Yes.
and actually drink, involving the nose at the same time.
That's crazy.
Now we wonder why Budweiser make you drink from a bottle.
That's insane.
So it has a nice, Budweiser actually has a really nice snappy crispness to the finish of it, created by the rice.
Yes.
Actually also has like a drying sensation. Asahi talk about it as something called kirichi, I think it's called. It's a good sensation. When you don't actually use the orthonasal system, your nose, it's actually very refreshing, and it hits the palate to exactly the right spot. But when you open up and actually use your nose at the same time, more aroma travels up into the olfactory system, which can throw the senses left, right, and center, or change your overall experience. So sometimes drinking from a bottle is very positive.
Yeah.
For a product like Duvel, it's not, because you get a sensation and an experience, but not the full overall picture. So yeah, it's one of those little experiments that you can do with any beer.
Like for people listening and they're probably going, so what did you experience different, guys? For me personally, like when I held my nose, I didn't get that slight bitterness as much. But when I let go, that bitterness that slight bitterness came back through. But then after the reset, not that it was more intense, but straight away I got the bitterness coming through on the liquid, and it was throughout the beer. Whereas before it was just after I released my nose, that bitterness was like, oh, hiya, how you doing?
And the thing is, when you taste the beer now, it doesn't really have a hoppy bitterness, or very little. But I know exactly when you got this pulse of almost like a sharp bang of bitterness when you released it, and then you got the flavour coming underneath it.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean,
cheers for that.
it's when I was doing it, and that this is my own personal experience. I held my nose, and effectively, a lot of the aromas were very dulled down. So there was quite a bit of a sort of gentle malt profile, and there was like a dull orange. And you would probably describe there as being a little bit of gentle sweetness in terms of on the taste, but it was dry as well at the same time, which also links into the bitterness sort of side of things. As soon as I released it, vanilla immediately came out straight at me. And then when I actually smelt it using my full system, the full olfactory system, so through the nose, through the mouth, immediately picked up a lot more orange and orange peel, whilst also getting a little bit of pomme fruit. So those apples and pears, particularly apple, like you've literally just skinned an apple. It's literally you've just peeled it. And
you literally said apple as like I took a sip and you said the word apple and then whoop, there was apple. I know it's probably one of those things when you hear it and you go, oh, yep, I can. But yeah, 100%.
I have to say that there is this. I did this experiment once before because you can trick people. So I'm trying to lead you into aromas that I think are genuinely there, created by certain ingredients. In this example, we're talking about yeast-driven styles. Now, this has sugar added to it, but the sugar would have fermented out. That maybe literally just left minimal amounts of body behind, but because the sugar's gone, it's not going to leave any sweetness and it won't leave much of a body. It's effectively there to create a quick, easy, cheap fermentation. So the yeast is what's going to create the driving force behind this, and the malt is going to help to give a really nice rounded body to the beer. And this body is definitely a medium plus for me, where it's full enough that you can actually feel it on the palate, but it's not so full that it actually is overwhelming or unbalancing. So it almost feels like it's sticky. The other thing is when you pour it, it's got a very high level of carbonation that's naturally produced within the bottle. So that effervescence really sort of cleans it out, also makes it feel a little bit soapy in terms of its profile. So very, very enjoyable. But back to the thing that I did. I got a room of 10 people back in my brewery days, and I convinced 9 of them that a beer that we just produced had been made with salt, and you could taste the salt in the beer. I lied. So I just sat there basically going, can you not smell the salt? There's definitely salt in this beer. Have you smelt it recently? It's an amazing profile in this beer. Can you not taste it? 9 of them put their hand up and went, yep, I can taste salt. And one person went, can't taste it at all. It's not there. I just led them the wrong way. So you have to be careful about saying certain things because people will immediately jump on them. If I said apple and I was expecting everybody to get apple or find a pomme fruit in there, that's great. But you can be led, unfortunately, down the wrong path. I do a lot of judging. And I think you guys were talking about Buckham Session Bitter going into the Champion Beer of Britain this year recently.
Yeah.
Is there something about the word Buckham, Gav?
Yeah.
That you guys deal
It
with
was
very
Callum.
well?
It was Callum. It wasn't me. It was Callum.
You've that's Gavin's preschool.
No, it was him. It was Callum's fault. It wasn't mine.
Yeah, you laughed as well.
No, I'm laughing at the fact that you listened to it and they just kind of there's a callback to that episode. But
But I get to judge on that, so I'll be on that panel. So that'd be cool. My first year, but effectively, cask beer is different because it has to be matured enough, has to have enough carbonation in it, and you obviously have to have the right temperature and storage, etc., etc. There's a lot of things that go into getting a good cask beer. Simple when you got it in a pub and you can just do it again and again, but in a venue that's not set up for cask regular, you got to look after it. But thanks for doing the experiment.
Can I throw my off the so? This is my off the wall. I suppose it's definitely not an off the wall question. I can imagine it comes up in every single course. Is there a type of beer, and this is for both of you? Is there a style? And I think we might have got a bit of a clue with the dark beer stuff earlier, from Chris. But Jamie, is there a beer? Given you've got to be objective and judge and cask mark and this, that, and the various other things that you do, is there a style of beer that you don't particularly enjoy at all? There might not be any, and this might be this might be a super quick answer. No, I like them all. I like them all equally. Or is there a style of beer that isn't necessarily your jam? And I'm thinking this is a question Mark would ask. How do you approach it objectively? without just saying it does what it says on the tin, bottle, glass, pump, click,
No.
whatever it might be that Mark's come across. That's the kindest Mark can be about a beer that that is not his style, as it does what it says on the tin or
True.
whatever vessel it is. How do you approach that if it's not necessarily and if you're having to judge it and still be objective? So is there one, and how do you be objective about what you're looking for in it?
Cool. First question. No, there isn't a beer style in the world I don't like. I don't like. The only thing I don't like is poorly made beer or poorly looked after beer. That's the thing I don't like. And to explain that a little bit better, in hop-driven beers, for example, you can throw as many hops at the wall as you particularly like, but if you've not created a bouquet of aromas that actually balance and sit well together alongside a body, a bitterness, and a texture and mouthfeel with a good level of carbonation and CO2, you failed, unfortunately, because hop-driven beer styles rely on that aroma, but you might find something that completely skews you left or skews you right that makes you not enjoy it. That happens a lot in low and no beers, for example, where they're trying to add a lot of aromas into them, but they're forgetting how to actually create something that is satisfactory for you to drink. Best example I can give here, no one's ever heard the story of Ben and Jerry's. Ben suffered from anosmia, no sense of smell. So when they were testing ice creams, he didn't get the sensation of chocolate, strawberry, or vanilla. He got the sensation of frozen water. So they added things into the ice cream to give it texture. Think about that when you try beers. How is your sensation? How is your satisfaction of the product when it comes to the body and texture of it? So following on to your next question, how do I objectively assess, judge liquid? You're effectively looking for off flavors, unbalancing qualities that effectively take the beer out of its normal spectrum, or any other faults that effectively you would associate and make the beer regarded as being wrong.
Yeah.
The best judging panel I go on at the moment is probably Great Taste, because they have a beer expert and then a bunch of people who are just there to say if it tastes good. So I'm usually put in as the beer expert. I have to have very clear technical knowledge about brewing process, about the beer styles, and about how certain beers should be delivered in terms of their characteristics, aroma, and otherwise. But I'm not allowed to judge it based on the fact of the style. I'm supposed to say whether it links into the style relevant or not. So we can't award 3 stars if it's off style, but we can give it 2 stars if it tastes great, as a really, really good example.
That is a good example.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So when I go to Champion Beer of Britain, the international beer competition, Great Taste, my job is to effectively sit there and not say whether I love that beer or not. It's to say whether that's a good beer for consumers to drink, and whether it actually sits well based on the fact that it's hop driven and the hops are fresh and they're giving either pronounced aroma, pronounced bitterness, or both. Malt driven, which is all about giving pronounced malt aromas whilst combining it with potentially hop bitterness or other characteristics such as some bitterness from dark roasted malts. Yeast driven, well, you're looking at those estery phenolic characteristics and how they're actually delivering through, but you can actually get some rather negative yeast profiles. A good example would be acetaldehyde, that green apple characteristic, which you don't necessarily want to get in all beer styles, acceptable in saisons. If we started picking it up in the Duvel, it might not be as accepted as it would in a saison style. So I have to objectively say that green apple characteristic that resembles acetaldehyde is negative. But as a palm fruit from the yeast, that's positive. So separating those out and actually being able to identify them, that's part of my job.
So before you're even sampling a beer in your mind, if you say it's a dark mild or whatever, a saison, whatever it may be, in your head you're already saying, right, saison, I need X, Y, and Z. But my first premise is this beer got anything wrong with it? And then, like you said, if I taste those things that shouldn't be there, immediately it's marked down. It's not hitting those boundaries where the style should be. Right, okay. Sorry, I'm just dissecting
So
what you're saying.
Apples and apples.
Sorry?
There are apples and apples. So there are apples
and apples.
If they're yeast-driven apples, it's great. But if you're getting apples to the point whereby you're thinking, there's a bit too much here. It's different. So you're looking for hints of palm fruit as opposed to getting smashed with
It would probably also smell like paint, like emulsion paint or raw pumpkin. Acetaldehyde comes out like that.
This is the thing that is like, it's, you've mentioned. So if we talk, this is my back very quickly to my thing on off flavors. And I promise, Chris, I'll ask you the same question about beers you don't like. But it's like emulsion, cat piss, wet cardboard, overripe bananas.
Yeah.
And the flavor, the descriptor of the off flavor is so, it's like that is going to jab you in the right between the eyes all the time. It's maybe picking out the subtleties that is the bit that worries me of that. And you're like, what's the difference between? It's absolutely smart, because I keep thinking when somebody says it's meant to be like emulsion, well, I'm just going to get smashed right between the eyes with emulsion.
It's almost like the off flavor descriptors are very bold, whereas
and it's varying degrees, which is different.
I mean, when we tried the Saison Dupont, I didn't necessarily jump out and say, "Oh, guys, this is an off beer. This is definitely off. Nobody drink it. Step away." I let everybody smell it first, because a lot of people would smell a Saison, have no idea what it's supposed to smell like, and might go, "Smells like butter, but I think that's going to be all right for this."
Yeah.
But that's when we have to jump in and go, "No, Saison should not smell like butter. That's diacetyl, and this is the reason why it's been created, and that's why it's there, and it shouldn't be there." Blah blah, etc., etc., etc. So, like, it's that misstep that can sometimes happen that unfortunately makes people dislike beer or certain styles because they've had a negative experience but not necessarily understood it. What did you think, Chris, of the Flanders Red Duchesse de Bourgogne?
Yes, I thought a lot about that.
Have you guys had it?
Nope.
No,
I have.
No, but
okay.
I know what it is. I can picture it. I know what it looks like. I've never tried.
Yeah.
And this is one of my New Year's Eve beers, wasn't it? Yeah. So when I knew I was going to do this, once we'd taken on Jamie, and we realised, I'm going to do this beer course, I better at least try some beers. For New Year's Eve, I went down to Noble Green Wine and went, okay, because they've got a brilliant range of beers. And I went, okay, let's just try a load of stuff that I've never had. And I like freshness in my drinks. Yeah. And so I was thinking, okay, sour beer, that's acidity. Acidity is what I want. I want freshness. This is exactly what I want. So I bought a load of sour beers for New Year's Eve. And do you know what? I was like, oh, God, I don't know about that. And I gave it to some friends, and they were like, no one liked them at all. It was like, I ended up drinking them all because, once you open it, you've got to finish it unless you know something's wrong with it. But sour beers they're not quite what I thought I was looking for. I was looking for something with freshness, and I can get by with funky flavors. I drink wine. God, there's some weird flavors in wine, but it was the tartness. It just there was the vinegar that really hit everybody. I remember your face. I watched you and Jane when you first tried it, and it was that vinegar hit, which is like, is that supposed to be there? Yeah. What's going on? Intentional. It's acetic bacteria doing its thing, making it go vinegary. Yeah.
But I remember your face because it had like a red berry cherry tartness to it mixed in amongst that acetic sourness. But for Chris's sake, as a first-time experiencer of that mixed firm style, it was just like, for a lot of people, it was absolutely shocking.
It's a shock.
Me, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
but it is amazing.
It is what you get used to. You're asking sort of beers I don't like, and I was saying, the darker beers. I can tell you why I don't like dark beers. It's very easy. When I was about 20, I went on a pub crawl, and it was a pint of pub, and we must have done like 10 pubs, so it was quite a lot of alcohol. And the last pub we were at was a pint of Guinness. And that was just the thing that pushed me over the edge. And I blamed the Guinness. Absolutely. It wasn't the other 10 pints I had earlier. It was the Guinness. Absolutely. So I just built this, we were talking about time. I built a negative thing about dark beers. I never had a dark beer in 25 years after that. And it wasn't probably even 30 years after that. And it was only in the last year that I've actually had any darker beers, and so it takes a while to get into it.
Definitely.
No,
The
I'll
irony
agree with
for me
that. I'll
is-
testament to that because literally, I've testified for the last 7 years of the podcast. I am not the dark beer drinker. However, since having a child and drinking more coffee, I have the dark beers are 100% coming into fold and doing me a favor. I want to make sure because we could genuinely talk for hours. No joke. I want to make sure that we touch on the point that you guys also do corporate events. You obviously have these certified courses, but they're also part of the website as well as corporate events as well. Let's touch on those as well. What can people expect, and what is on offer for you guys in terms of corporate level events?
I'll do that. So, to be honest, Jamie doesn't run the corporate events just yet, although he probably will be.
Yeah.
We just haven't run one since he was there. But usually what we're doing is we're bringing a range of beers, and we're just going through what we do in the level 1 course really is just trying to show the brewing process and how that reflects in the beers, and just go through the key stages in the beers and show beers that highlight those key stages. But also, obviously, because it's a corporate event, they like to have some fun and games and things like that. So there's always a little bit of competition in there, that type of thing going on there. So there's all sorts of things you can do that are quite fun and gamey for that type of thing. So it's always a mixture of those type of activities. Although, to be fair, we probably do more beer tastings for stag parties than we do corporate events.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
No surprise there.
Yeah, but we'll get Jamie doing some of the more high-end corporate stuff later on, I think.
Absolutely.
Going
Look forward to it.
And the website as a whole, tell the people about that in general as well. What other bits and bobs are on there, and what can they expect?
Okay, so we're actually about to launch a new website, but our current website at the moment is 3050.co.uk. And on there, obviously, we're a big wine company. You know, we started out in wine 25 years ago, and that's, you know, we've just evolved, and we started doing beer courses before, or beer tastings with corporates and privates before Jamie joined us. We've been doing them for about 5 or 6 years. So they're obviously on there. We do a lot of privates, we do a lot of corporates. My God, I've done so many hen party wine tastings. Trust me, you try doing a hen party wine tasting in a jacuzzi with 8 girls in bikinis. It's really hard to deliver the content.
That sounds like hard work.
It is hard, lads. It's hard yards. But yeah, so we've got the WC courses as well, obviously, and our website is really geared up to help people studying as well. So we mentioned we've got a huge amount of content, but the content we have isn't just for our students. So we have students all over the world purchasing our content to help them with their WSET courses, along with podcasts and things like that. So we might, I haven't run this past Jamie yet, but we might do a beer podcast at some point. But don't worry, it will be quite educational, and it'll be focused on content or preparing people for WSET courses.
I love how he said that. So like, he went, hold on a minute, ours will be educational, and you guys can stick to those.
Listen, I'm quite happy. I'm absolutely over the moon that we can quite happily straddle and corner the beer oblique awful comedy.
We have a lane.
Yeah, we have a lane. We're absolutely in it. For sure. That's such a cool concept to have so many things covered and there, and have so many resources, and it's just amazing for people that are, like you say, kind of beer curious. It's if you've ever liked, like you were saying, Jamie, if you find that you like lager and you've ever thought, why is it that I'm enjoying that, and yet whenever anybody mentions they get as far as "geh," and I'm like, no, absolutely not, no way, no, never, ever. And why is that? And why? What's the? If you've ever thought that, then those type of courses are, and the content and listening and the chance to kind of educate yourself without necessarily, well, I maybe didn't want to sign up to a course, but I'm quite happy to chuck a couple of quid at something that I can listen to for an hour or an hour and a half or whatever it might be, and pick up a few hints and tips on why that might be, and satisfy that curiosity and have something there for them, that would be, it's tremendous. Like, it's to be able to, and I, confidence wise, if you walk up in a bar that does take itself seriously in terms of beer and whatever, the one thing they'll talk about, and we've spoken about it with everybody, is they want you to ask to try stuff. But see the confidence that you feel you need to have to be that guy, without being the person at the ice cream shop who wants to try 20 tasters before they pick one that they go for.
Yeah.
To be able to have a conversation, or at least understand what it is you're looking for and why you like what you like, I can imagine adding a whole arm of confidence to those people that think, if I walk into one of these craft beer places, I'll just stick to lager. I know what that is. I'm not going to be far away from that. To have that wee bit of confidence and to listen to something or have a conversation, or if you're that interested, do the level 1 or level 2 course, just adds a different level of confidence to you, to be able to go into a bar and ask the question and ask to try stuff and know what you're going to get, and have a lane to be in where you're thinking. The approach that you guys are taking obviously gives you a category or gives you a direction to go in, and then you can branch out for there. But you know the base level of what it is you're looking for.
Yeah.
Between like, is it ale, is it lager, or is it mixed firm? What am I into? Is your ultimate, and then go for there and branch out and be whatever you want to be and like whatever you fancy liking. But you've got the ability to ask a question.
I love what you're saying, because the thing that's reminded me of is that so it's really, really effective on the level 2, but of course happens in the level 1 as well. When you start tasting with me in a room, you're calibrating to my palate. So I actually lead those sessions. We don't ask you to over-engage. We don't go, here's the beer, tell me everything. It's more about, we sort of lead you in, this is a malt-driven style. Yeah. Let's go through a tasting. Appearance, then to the nose, then to the palate. Then we do the quality assessment at the end. But I guide 90% of that right at the beginning, whilst letting people introduce what they're experiencing. So they start to use that language, start to become more familiar with the dictionary that we're trying to teach them from the SAT, which is the systematic approach to tasting. As you get into the latter stages of the courses, that's when we start opening up the room a bit more, give more time for people to actually give their information to us instead of us giving it to them.
Yeah.
We still always calibrate to my palate, because I'm supposed to be the official taster in the room. And I've got the most experience when it comes to tasting. That's what I'm supposed to be able to do. But that's how we train and teach. It's like what you said, it's that confidence thing. You pick up those aromas, I'm talking about them. I mentioned apple, and Gav instantly went, I got that apple. Yeah. And as we did that tasting again, and we get to the 3rd, 5th, 7th, 8th beer, your confidence grows, because you've picked up apple. Now you're suddenly picking up bread dough. Now you're suddenly picking up caramel, and you're able to use that language that we've given you with more confidence. So it builds and builds and builds. Very important detail about that. And I don't want to miss this. I don't know whether you guys have picked this up, but there's a lovely grapefruit aroma in here now. It's warmed up, and almost like a very, very gentle candied banana. It's just started coming out. The candied banana is like near the top, whereas the grapefruit is a little bit heavier and woodier down at the bottom.
I've got the banana
for sure.
The grapefruit, I'm not sure on.
The grapefruits, when I do smelling, I always
maybe because I've hardly got any left, mind you.
When I do assessment checks, I always go from top to bottom, because aroma compounds have different levels of volatility. So you got very volatile at the top and heavier at the bottom. So you go top to bottom, and it really opens up the entire profile of the beer, and then you go from bottom to top again.
There you go, Gilroy.
Think of it like you get an orange at the top, but more like earthier spice aroma might be lower down at the bottom, particularly an earthier, heavier aroma like that. But yeah, delicious beer.
That's maybe where Mark's got it over us, because he's blessed in that.
Well, his beak is off the big.
And the schnoz category.
Would you like to see my profile shot now?
No, that's perfectly, perfectly within bounds. Mark, however,
I've definitely got my dad's nose, that's for sure.
Mine used to be petite, but as I'm getting older, it just keeps getting bigger.
We do keep getting bigger on the nose and the ears in particular, apparently.
I know. Look at yours, a huge orange one.
Oh, I'm covering them up. Wait a second. Unfortunately,
one of the words Jamie used I really liked was the word calibration, because when you're tasting, I mean, I know lots about wine tasting and how to teach people wine tasting, so I'm going to lean on to that a little bit more. But when we're teaching wine to people, there's two elements to it. It's like the technique for tasting, how to go through the mechanical process to ensure you get the most out of the glass. And as Jamie was saying, there's a little technique of going from top to bottom and different ways of tasting. And the order that you taste things in can make a difference as well. And that's one part. That's like the mechanics of it. And then the second part is the calibration. And in calibration, it's like, what is the beer intensity? Is it very intense? Is it very mild? And learning to be able to write a consistent tasting note that someone else who's done a similar course will come up with a tasting note that's actually quite similar, and you can compare and contrast. And that's, for me, one of the really strengths about systematic approach to tasting that WST have, is that you are learning mechanical processes and techniques to improve your tasting technique, but then you're learning to be able to write a tasting note that other people would write a similar tasting note. So therefore you have a reference, because whenever I look at some of the beer apps and the tasting notes, they're not really, no one's talking the same language at all.
No.
And having a consistent language and a calibration and a mechanism to do it means that communication can be done at a better level than, or I like this or I don't like that type of thing. And I think that's calibration and mechanics are the two things that are really, I think, are really, really good. But the nice thing about the level 2 course is you don't actually get examined on your ability to taste at level 1 or level 2. The beer is there as a teaching element as opposed to a testing. I don't think WST are in the process, but at level 3 for wine, for example, we actually have wine exams where they have to write a tasting note for it. And I'm always amazed at how consistent, like some people are absolute muppets and just forget about them. They're never going to get it. But most, I'd say 90% of the people, 95% of the people get it. And they can write a really good tasting note that you can infer quality level from, which we haven't talked about much. But in wine, for example, I judge at wine competitions like Jamie judges at beer competitions. And we're always looking for the quality element in the wine and to understand it. And sometimes you say, well, a wine's really good because it's really got a very pronounced nose, a long length, a lingering finish on the mouth. And sometimes you go, no, it's not about that. It's about the silkiness or the structure or the balance of the wine. And sometimes it's about all of that. And one of the things with Jamie and the beers, when you hear him talk about his assessment, he's not just talking about what the beer tastes like. He's talking about the balance of the beer and how everything fits together. And I think balance is one of those magic words that professionals use. Some of them don't know what they're talking about, because I hear professionals use it in wine and now I go, you don't have no idea. All right. But they do. But when you understand balance and how components interact, that's like the next level of understanding in wine. And I presume
Can I bring a point in here? Because I've got something that I'd love to add to the balance that you're talking about, because it is the quality assessment. And the quality assessment for WSET is A, B, C, D, E. Absence of fault, balance, complexity, definition, and then expressiveness. Now, absence of faults we've already discussed. Has it got faults or not? Balance, and a really good example of this in the beer world. Think of a Rauch beer using smoked malt, right? So that typically has wood smoke, smoked bacon, smoked cheese characteristics coming into it, right?
Yes.
Balance is about why does an incredibly intense aroma, such as wood smoke and smoked cheese and smoked bacon, not overpower the beer? What is it about the beer that actually makes it balance? What other elements are in there? And it could be, for example, that they're using some highly kilned and caramel malt to actually provide an underlayer of sweetness and other aroma profiles that actually mellow out that smokiness slightly. It could be that they've added a more high level of carbonation, so they reset and rest the palate. And they could also have a medium level of bitterness that actually sits right in the middle of the beer, adding more body. So it doesn't taste too thin, watery, or pithy. It actually extends itself in terms of the overall flavor that you're enjoying. So that's how to paint a balanced picture. What is it about the beer that could make it not work? What is it that makes it work? That's a really good way of picturing it.
Jamie, go and do me a favor, get a TikTok, because I'm genuinely fed up of seeing idiots. Oh, 2-finger white head. I'm like, it's just how you fucking poured it. But it's nothing to do with the fucking beer. Like, fuck me. Honestly.
Nice. The big thing is like just talking about balance. Balance is obviously
Exactly.
a range of different elements. I've had stouts before, supermarket stouts from breweries, whereby it's smelled like hazelnuts. It's tasted. It's got the hazelnut flavor there. It's got the coffee. It's got the kind of roundedness, but it felt like body wise like drinking cola.
Yep. Yeah,
it was way
absolutely.
too thin. It just did it was so it was thin, and it was like, well, you've totally put me off there, because it smells excellent. It's got all the taste profile bits that you would want to hit, but it feels like drinking cola.
Yeah.
If you want to try one of the best porters in the world, this thing will blow your socks off. Hambleton's Nightmare Porter. You've never had it, just get it in the bottle. It is freaking insane. It is about one of the most spot-on porters I've ever tried in my life. And it's just an innocent little brewery. It has these lovely horses on the front of nearly every label. But just try it and just be like, that's what a porter should be. And that's the way I've always thought about it. I mean, the Anne Sebastian Hop Day is another fantastic example, but it's a seasonal, while the Hambleton Nightmare Porter is incredibly good all year round. I wanted to add to the, I was going to say about the quality thing. With the complexity, you're looking at whether the beer has 1, 2, 3-dimensional levels of complexity. So whether there's actually multiple levels of complexity coming from the primary ingredients and others that have been added in. So if malt's the primary ingredient, are you able to actually say, great, so there are multiple layers of, for instance, bread dough, bread crust, etc., etc. Definition is try and imagine a camera out of focus or in focus. So could you say that was ciabatta bread crust? That is an aroma profile that's in focus, and you can define it very clearly. If your descriptor is bready, it's probably out of focus. It hasn't got enough definition behind it. So that beer hasn't, unfortunately, got enough definition. And then expressiveness in the WSET language, and I love this, it's about the story. Does this beer tell the story of a malt-driven style? And if so, why? It's a lovely way of finishing off, and that's how we give scores ranging from faulty all the way to outstanding. We want to give you outstanding beers on our course. That's 100%. We've had a faulty beer on there, which played its part, was interesting to go through and dissect. But we want people to try outstanding beers if we can.
Genuinely, this has been one of the best episodes that we've done in a long time. And there was at one point at 50 minutes, I was like, I feel like we've barely touched the surface, and I feel like we could talk for days.
I feel like that.
And it, but the saying that I'm curious, I'm looking at the time and realizing we're going over 2 hours, which again, we could do another 2 hours easily. Genuinely, I've still got questions on my sheet, right, on my bit of paper right now, and I'm like, it feels like we have to do a whole episode. Gentlemen, please once again shout out the website and let people know about the courses, where they can sign up, except for the WSET courses as well.
So the website's 3050.co.uk. That's THIRTYFIFTY.co.uk. 3050.co.uk. The courses, we run them, as Jamie said, anywhere in the UK. You can join us. There's only about 3 or 4 approved program providers for the beer courses, and we're one of the few. But we can have students in Scotland, Wales. So if there's anyone that's not crazy in Wales, just offend the last of the crazy.
There goes that audience.
I love Wales. I love Welsh rugby. I'm a Kiwi. I love Welsh rugby. I'm just kidding. But anywhere in the UK is not a problem. And as you say, if it's a level 1 course, maybe even in Europe as well, if some people are interested. There's a whole area in there. But if you need more information, just give us a call or shout out and give us a yell, and we'll respond and have a bit of a chat to you before the course anyway, if required. Yeah. And yeah, just 3050.co.uk. Just find the WSD bit and find the beer section, and we're away. Yeah, easy as.
Amazing stuff. Obviously, all that information will be below in the description. Shout out the podcast one more time because it'd be rude not to, mate.
Yeah, so the world's first wine podcast since 2006, UK Wine Show. UK Wine Show. We do wine, news, all sorts of stuff.
Amazing.
And beer now as well. I'm on there twice.
And we've done a few beer podcasts as well,
Love
just
it.
to get there, Jamie, in there.
Love it. Honestly, it's been eye-opening. I have definitely learnt a couple of little tricks there, especially with the smelling. I didn't realize that. So I'll be using that in future. As always, if you listen to this episode, make sure you subscribe, hit that ding-a-ling-a-ling to be notified of every single episode. You can show your support by giving us a 5-star rating. You can show your official support as well and get every single episode a week early by going to patreon.com/beer fridge podcast. Guys, this was so much fun.
Yeah.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Genuinely appreciate you guys taking the time to jump in the podcast. And I feel like there needs to be a second episode of this. 100%.
If you give me another episode,
right?
if you give me another episode, I will tell you the story about us shipping an original barrel of Bourbon County Stout all the way over to London and serving it straight out of the bourbon barrel in our pub, just for starters.
Ooh.
That's one of my favorite ever beer stories.
There's a
we
series.
We served it in halves. It lasted 32 hours. It was a barrel. That's 36 gallons, I think.
225 litres for a normal beer.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious me.
It was insane. It was for the Old Ale Festival we were serving at our pub. So my beer, time has gone on for a while, but it's so much fun. So many different things. We couldn't actually fit it in the cellar. We had to be sitting there kicking it, but afraid that it was going to burst open. Anyway, that's for another time.
Wow.
That sounds like it needs a chronicle episode. But no, genuinely appreciate you guys jumping on the podcast. And like I said, all the information for everything that have been mentioned, it will be in the description. Until next time, cheery bye.
Toodaloo.
1, 2,